Hey guys, hope all of you are doing fine. This is the part 17 of the Being Reborn in Marvel with Gamer's Ability. Marvel Gamer Part 17. After recovering the Ancient's one soul, and seeing her become whole once again with a beaming smile, we parted ways, both having a mission at hand to complete before the darkness came, hers, conquering Earth. Mine, finding the missing piece. Alone in my office, I dedicated my entire being to try and find what I was missing, what I needed to make a weapon, a symbol that would serve beyond slaying Null. I knew beyond question that my weapon still lacked a purpose. And that before crafting it, before molding that material into shape, I needed to find a purpose, an intent that called to me, that resonated with me. It sounded simple enough. But it wasn't that easy for me. No matter how much thought I put into it, my mind would always end up in the same line, the same question. What purpose did I want my weapon to serve? Beyond the obvious one. I sighed, resting my head on one of my hands, as I ponderously looked at the fragment of the cosmos in my inventory, trying to find the answer to my question. No sense in wasting time, I muttered, closing my inventory with the wave of my hand. There was still much to do, much to arrange, and while the weapon was without a doubt a very crucial part in efforts against Null, it didn't warrant wasting time, doing nothing but staring at the fragment without a clear path or objective to follow. Time was of the essence, and wasting any of it would only affect me, and everyone else in the end. So, it was best if I focused on other matters. Sure, the prospect of not having a weapon when the time came scared me. However, while the thought scared me, it was nothing more than a thought. I had not a shred of doubt that the purpose, the intent I was searching for, would be revealed in time. In the meantime, however, I would deal with other matters. Like preparing my army. For the most part, my newest golems were ready to face Null's army. Having the necessary skills to counter the symbiotes, and resist them, however, while strong, an army without a commander was nothing but cannon fodder. My army lacked that. A commander. In the ideal scenario, I would simply manage the army by myself. But, this wasn't the ideal scenario, not by a long shot. I had too much on my plate to also lead an army during the upcoming war, at least efficiently. Considering many key factors, and the fact I was probably the only one capable of facing Null without dying instantly, I had no doubts the King in Black would keep me very occupied, giving me no time to multitask, at least if I wanted to live. So, I had to find a commander. One able to lead my army as efficiently as possible. Giving me the freedom to focus entirely on Null. One I could trust. One within my absolute control. Fortunately for me, that commander had a name. Ultron. For a moment in time, I had almost forgotten about the AIS. I had by all means left collecting dust in my inventory, figuratively speaking. In fact, now that I really think about it, this apocalyptic event the universe was hosting was positively the perfect time to bring those two to life. Well, time to make them a body. I smiled, opening my inventory to grab the two, or the discs that held their code for that matter. Discs at hand, I used my cosmic powers to create two fully robotic bodies, using the strongest materials I knew or had ever possessed, which were Uru, adamantium, and vibranium. Bringing each of the above-mentioned materials to existence with nothing but a simple thought. A feat I had managed to accomplish only because I knew the materials very well, thanks to my previous interactions with them. I mean, I had a farm of vibranium and adamantium. I knew how those two worked pretty well. As for the last ingredient, Uru, well, I had had the axes Thor had given me long enough to know how Uru worked, and what I didn't know, I learned a few seconds ago by using my powers as a celestial, in turn, allowing me to create the material without many difficulties. As to why I had used my celestial powers to create the bodies instead of pulling a Tony. Well, as much as it pained me to admit it, I lacked the necessary knowledge to create and code the bodies those two required to operate at full capacity. But beyond all, it was commodity what pushed me to use my powers. I mean, I could either take a few minutes of my day to learn what I needed to create their bodies, and then invest even more time increasing my armor crafting skills to forge their bodies, or, hear me out, or I could just will that shit into existence. Call me lazy, but I pick option B. Well, time to bring them online, I guess, I muttered, inserting Ultron's disc into his body, chuckling at the sight. What can I say? It was funny, it felt like I was installing Windows or something. Installing Ultron version 2.0. 5% done. 15% done. 39% done. 47% done. I guess even with godlike powers some stuff is impossible to avoid. 56% done. 59% done. 71% done. At least it's going fast. 88% done. 91.5% done. Really, decimals. 94.7% done. 95.2% done. 95.9% done. I guess we are going with decimals now. 38% done. I'm 1 second away from hurling Ultron to be, into the closest supernova. 51.4% done. 89.5% done. 99.9% done. Good. 100% done. Ultron version 2.0, installation complete. Initiating system. What? Ultron muttered, bringing one of his hands to his face in confusion. Grinning like a kid about to open his presents on Christmas Eve, I waved at the android in a state of awe. What can I say? I was excited. Why? Well, unlike the MCU directors of Age of Ultron, fuck them, I had created Ultron to look like his comic version. But not any comic version, no, I was, after all, a man of taste, indeed, so I had made him look exactly like in the comic, Annihilation, Conquest. You. Ultron muttered, his red glowing eyes turning to me, his voice conveying a lot of shock, but how? I see, it was all a simulation, fascinating. However, his initial state of confusion ended as quickly as it came, with him coming to the answers he was looking for. So, hi. I waved again. Hi, Alex, if I remember correctly I was trying to kill you the last time we saw each other. How the tables turn, Ultron chuckled, shrugging. Though I guess it's more accurate to say, it was another version of me altogether, running an entirely different firmware. I frowned, turning my gaze to the minimap to verify the color of his allegiance. Green. You don't have to check, Ultron chuckled, his eyes closing. I am incapable of hurting you, or even wanting to, not that I want, I mean, why would I want to? Ha, what a mouthful. Anyway, sure, I might have some of the memories the other Ultron had, but I share none of his views. Frankly, I question how that version of me came to such a narrow-minded goal. I blinked, staring at him like a goldfish. I guess it was my turn to be in shock. I mean, I wasn't expecting this at all. I didn't even expect him to hold any memories of our encounter in the time-walking dungeon. I guess what he was nothing but the result of a simple man experimenting with things he couldn't understand. Ultron shrugged, putting an index finger on his chin. I can't even imagine how the Ultron the simulation was based on was, I mean, the one you battled was a program running within the simulation of a future event. And based on the data I have, that Ultron was vastly superior to the one it was based on, which would make the first Ultron a toaster in comparison. I guess, I replied. Then again, the title of first can't no longer belong to that version of me. With you having created me years before that, clearly, inferior version could ever come to be, in turn making me the first Ultron, at least for this timeline. Ultron chuckled, what a beautifully intricate paradox, my friend. Congratulations, I guess I chuckled. I'm sorry, where are my manners? Ultron replied, turning his attention back to me. It's okay, it was fun watching you talk, I replied. Why, thank you, Ultron replied, bringing a hand to his chest as he bowed ever so slightly, sounding rather flattered, but while undoubtedly my voice is as enchanting as they come, we have other things to worry about, Null for example. He already knew about Null, well that's unexpected. I assume that look of confusion is based on why I know about Null, right? Ultron said, I assume as much, seeing as 28 of your facial muscles moved, indicating confusion, or worry, but seeing you can erase me with a thought, confusion wins the bout. Though the subtle facial changes can also indicate constipation. But I ruled it out because it seemed very unlikely to be the case, but I suppose it's better not to leave anything out, so, are you confused or constipated? I am not constipated, I replied. Then confusion it is, Ultron replied, clapping his hands together. Well, to clear your confusion, the reason I know about Null it's because you created my entire body using your essence, making the process less, what's the word I am looking for? Computerized, yes that's it, making the process less computerized, and more intimate. Your essence while making my body carried a clear intent, fighting Null, along other bits of information, that at the moment are irrelevant. Oh, well that explains a lot. So you know what your purpose is then? I asked. I do, Ultron nodded, humiliating an elder god wannabe in the arts of warfare. He finished, balling both of his hands into fists. Pretty much, I nodded, not at all worried by his wording. Delightful. Ultron replied in a cheerful tone, well, let's get to work. Based on the data I have about Null, I have a few suggestions I would like to propose if you have the time. I nodded, interested in what he had to say. Very well then, Ultron nodded, taking a seat on the floor. Ultron's requests, or propositions, were many. The biggest one, however, was that he wanted to make an army of him, one made out of vibranium and adamantium specifically. He wanted to alter the metal's composition on a molecular level, while leaving their main attributes intact, giving the mix of both metals the ability to transmit, emit, bounce, and enhance sonic waves several hundred times better than before. His idea, in common terms, was rather simple but nonetheless brilliant. He wanted this new army to be the complete antithesis of the symbiotes. How so? Well, the androids he wanted to produce would not only emit powerful sonic vibrations, constantly might I add, but, upon being hit, should that ever come to happen, they would also emit sonic vibrations, adding to the ones the droids will constantly emit. Those vibrations would then bounce between droids, thanks to his modifications, creating an endless chain of sounds being transmitted and emitted, in a perpetual chain of enhancement. I have to admit, it was beyond genius, his idea. Not only that, but to add the cherry on top of the cake, he also wanted all of the droids to have heat-based weapons, and sonic-based weapons, to increase efficiency, in his own words. That was his main idea. Needless to say, I accepted his proposal, giving him access to my resources to do with them as he pleased. Leaving him on one of the planets I had factories of vibranium and adamantium, with an army of golems with crafting skills and other things to ease his operation. With that said and done, I found myself staring at Jarvis, or Jarvis to be, as I had yet to insert the disk that contained his software, musing over the role I wanted to give him. I guess I need an extra set of eyes. If Ultron was to be my master of war, by Game of Thrones analogy, Jarvis would then be my master of whispers, being my eyes and ears at all times. I smiled. I liked that idea, someone keeping tabs of everything for me. Having a clear idea of what I wanted from Jarvis, I grabbed the disk tight, and pushed into his body, one equally as powerful as the one I had given Ultron, with a design just as awesome. Installing JARVIS. Version 2.0. 10% done. 20% done. 30% done. 40% done. 50% done. 60% done. Well, this is going faster than with Ultron. 70% done. 80% done. 90% done. 100% done. JARVIS. Version 2.0 installation complete. Initiating system. Most unusual, Jarvis said as he came online, looking at his body. It seems my entire code has been restructured. No, more like remade from scratch using an old version of me as a template. Hi, I waved at him. At your service, sir, Jarvis said, as he turned to face me, waving his hand. So, how do you feel? I asked, wondering if he would react anything like Ultron, if he would have any thoughts about Tony. I am operating at 100% capacity, sir, if that's what you're asking, Jarvis replied, his voice carrying that captivating British accent I loved about MCU Jarvis. Just now I had noticed, and I was grinning. I had managed to replicate the accent and tone to perfection. Not really, but the answer works, I replied, giving him a small smile. If what you asked is what my thoughts are about my current situation, on the subject of Mr. Stark, then I must ask of you to not worry in the least, sir. My allegiances lie with you. As for my personal opinion of Mr. Stark, well, I hold him in high regard, as one would to a distant cousin. I'm not sure if I'm using the analogy correctly. Nevertheless, regardless of my personal thoughts about him, the Jarvis he created, and the Jarvis that stands before you, are two different programs altogether, Jarvis replied. I know that. I was asking more along the lines of, how does it feel to, well, exist, knowing the AI you were based on is yet to be created, I replied. Oh, I see. Well, in that case, sir, I really have no comments. Your powers operate outside analyzable parameters, Jarvis replied. Not the first time someone has told me that, I chuckled. If you like, I could start gathering data for a deeper analysis of your powers, sir. With enough information, I should be able to offer you a better answer. I estimate I will require around 87,000 zettabytes of data before being able to give you an acceptable answer. Jarvis replied, in a very serious manner. No, it's okay, maybe for another time. Right now, what I require is for you to assist Ultron on his mission, while keeping an eye on the universe as a whole. After you finish assisting Ultron, we'll discuss what your role will be, I replied, opening a portal to where Ultron was. Understood. I will put that analysis proposal on the calendar for a later date, to be reviewed for approval. Maybe after Null is dealt with. Jarvis nodded, turning towards the portal, stopping a few inches from entering it. If I might, sir, while I assist Ultron on his current task, can I be allowed to run some simulations about the upcoming war? The amount of data you have on Null's army is substantial, so I think these simulations and their results will prove to be educational at the very least, giving us a general idea of what to expect. Feel free to do as you please, as long as it furthers our current goal of eliminating Null, I replied, giving him a quick nod. Very well, Sir. Jarvis nodded, walking into the portal as I closed it. I smiled. In 1 hour, I had taken a massive weight out of my shoulder, the armies were forming faster, and things were shaping in my favor. Which left one thing only: the weapon. Sir, I apologize for bothering you so soon, but spatial data extracted from your universal map after a quick scan of it suggests Thanos is on his way to collect the Soul Stone, or rather what he needs to collect the stone in question. He has yet to set course to the planet, but I have run some calculations and there is a 98.89% chance he will as soon as he retrieves Gamera. Quick scan. He left 2 fucking seconds ago. Keep me posted. I replied using the channel he was using for communication. As you wish, sir. I will keep my eyes on him while I assist and monitor Ultron on his task. I do not require monitoring. Ultron replied almost immediately. Data suggests you do. All versions recorded of you within our database always end up trying to end all life. Therefore, monitoring is required. All those versions of me as you speak of, were unfathomably inferior in every single way. As you are compared to me. Please, don't argue like children. I sighed, maybe having those two working together was a mistake. Alex Walker POV. Just as Jarvis had predicted, the very moment Thanos had retrieved his adoptive daughter, Gamera, from where she was hiding, a notification appeared in my system, like clockwork. New quest created equals the 6 Infinity Stones. Dancing under your machinations like a clueless puppet, Thanos is on his way to collect the Soul Stone, and it's your mission to take the stone from his tear-soaked hands. Once he does so, taking from him not only the stone, he had to sacrifice the only person he had truly loved, his daughter, but the other in his possession. Objective equals take the stones from Thanos. Side objectives equals let Thanos know it was you all along before killing him. Rewards equals Soul Stone, Mind Stone. Rewards equals, a rather evil side quest if you ask me, but who cared? Fuck Thanos, I wanted those. Whatever they were. Meaning all I had to do now was wait. And the stones would be mine. It was all a matter of time. Which according to Jarvis's calculations would take exactly 1 hour and 15 seconds. Well, I guess I could eat something, I muttered, feeling my stomach growl. Now that I think about it, I don't quite remember the last time I ate something. I mean, sure, if I wanted to, I could simply not eat anymore. I didn't really need food after the Tiamat incident, but to that thought, I said fuck no, I loved eating. I could go for a sandwich. I mean, Asgard has really good ham and cheese. The bread is meh, but the rest is top quality. Besides, I can always get some bread from Fury's fridge. Well, it has been decided, it's time to make some sandwiches. Bucky Barnes POV. I wasn't sure what my role in this upcoming war was. In general, I wasn't sure what my role was anymore. I used to be a soldier. Someone on par with Alex, someone able to help him. That was buried in the past now. Leaving me with no real role, as I was far outclassed by everyone I knew now, with all of them filling a clear role in our group, except for me. It was funny really. I used to think that all I wanted was the fighting to end, and I still do. I still seek peace. It's just that now I also wanted to be useful to those I cared about. I needed power to be able to protect those I loved. Even that Morin of Thor. Not that he will ever hear that from me. I miss the days being a super soldier was all it took. I chuckled with a sigh, my shoulders tensing, as I looked at my hands for a brief moment, thinking of nothing. How pathetic, here I was pitying myself, instead of taking action. When has crying ever solved shit? Hadn't I told Alex not to do the same shit before? Grow up a fucking pair, James, are you even listening to yourself? I growled in disgust, slapping my own face with enough strength to draw some blood from it. Nothing serious, you are weak, big deal, ask Alex for help instead of bitching about it. Ask me for what? Alex's voice caught my attention, making me turn in the direction it had come from in a startled fashion. What are you doing here? I asked, trying to wipe the blood I had drawn earlier before Alex noticed. Making a sandwich. Alex replied. Right, I was in the kitchen. Fucking great. I couldn't have had my moment in my room. By the way, is there anything I should avoid in the fridge? I mean, whatever you ate sucker punched you, Alex said with a frown, pointing at my hand. I punched myself, I replied. Why? Alex asked, pressing the subject. I was being a moron, I answered with a small shrug, deciding to give him a short version of what had happened. I had to punch the stupid out of me before I grew accustomed to it. Alex blinked, his face turning into one of surprise as he froze in place for a brief moment, before simply starting to laugh, with the laugh evolving to a point he was gasping for air. That sounds like something Thor would do. No. You tell him anything and I will end you. I barked at him, knowing very well that the threats I was throwing at him were impossible to achieve. Not only because I cared about him, but because there wasn't much of a difference between me and a Q-tip in terms of damage potential when it came to hurting Alex. Then again, he could hurt his ears using a Q-tip, so I guess the Q-tip stands as the superior fighter in this scenario. Okay, I won't tell him, Alex chuckled, raising his hands above his head, but seriously, what did you want to ask me though? Right, he had heard that part. I sighed, well, the truth is, I'm weak, agonizingly weak. I can't protect anyone anymore, not you, not the girls, not our friends, hell, not even myself in what's about to come. I miss the days when being a super soldier was enough, but I have to accept those days are long gone. So what I want to ask of you is... I paused, struggling to find the words. I want you to make me the super soldier of now. Okay, Alex nodded, turning to the fridge to grab some ham and cheese for his sandwich. Just like that? I asked, taken back by how fast he had answered. Sure, I expected him to help, but I also expected more of a back and forth with the subject. Bucky, my daughters call you Uncle Bucky. Alex answered, as he continued to grab more ingredients for his sandwich from the fridge. I love you as a brother, I mean, by now you should know there's very little I wouldn't do for you. I smiled, feeling like a massive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. To think a simple comment like that would blow away all the emotions I was feeling a few moments ago. So, what do you want? Alex asked. For a sandwich or for my power-up? I asked with a chuckle. Both, Alex replied, turning around to face me, while opening a small portal with his left hand, pulling a loaf of bread out of it, one from a brand from Earth. I patiently waited, sitting above the tallest mountain of Vomia, my legs crossed, as I counted the seconds for the Mad Titan's arrival. 59 seconds for Thanos' arrival. I sighed, dragging a hand across my face in boredom, as I looked at the counter, counting each second pass. Feeling the thick mists of Vomir crash against my body, their energy and what sustained them breaking and dissipating upon mixing with my own leaking energy. It was truly a sight to behold, at least for me, seeing this entire process happen over and over again, as the mists of Vomir attacked my soul, or tried to, with each attempt failing. A defense mechanism. One the Soul Stone had created to protect itself. How fascinating! If only I had more time, I would have loved to study this phenomenon. Unfortunately, we can't always get what we want. 10 seconds for Thanos' arrival. I looked at the timer and smiled. It was time to end what I had set in motion. Without moving, I turned my attention to the sky, seeing Thanos' ship breaking the atmosphere as it entered the planet, meaning I had a few seconds at most to prepare the last details. Tilting my head ever so slightly to the left, I grinned, snapping my fingers to create an illusionary replica of the Red Skull to guide Thanos on the process to obtain the stone just like he had done in the movies. Now, it was simply a matter of watching the Mad Titan kill Gamera from afar, giving the stone the sacrifice it required. Well, time to see their last moments, I sighed, using sight to observe the events that were about to unfold. Sight connected, I witnessed Thanos' ship land on the planet, creating a loud rumble across the area as the ship stabilized on the uneven ground of Vomir. The ship was big, massive even. I wonder why he picked that ship if he knew he was to come only with Gamera. Which in a completely unrelated note reminds me, I have a ship I have yet to even use properly. Not that I will never need it, I can teleport anywhere, anytime, but even then, the idea of traveling in a ship across space sounds rather exciting. I mean, it could be my version of a road trip with the girls. Jarvis, please remind me to revise the idea of going on a space/road trip with the girls after the war. As you wish, sir. Bringing my attention back to what was happening with a creaking metallic sound, I watched as the large doors of Thanos' ship opened wide, with the Mad Titan's voice being the first thing to come out. "Let's go, daughter," Thanos said, stepping out of the ship, his voice soft, sounding almost kind. "Do I even have a choice?" Gamera shot back as she came into view, glaring at Thanos, her eyes full of loath and anger. I pitied the girl. A pawn, playing under the thumb of another pawn, one I control. Unfortunately for her, my pity for her was not enough to save her. "We must do this," Gamera, Thanos replied, bringing one of his hands to her shoulder, looking like a giant grabbing a doll. "So you say," Gamera replied. "In time, you will see," Thanos replied, his tone full of melancholy. I wonder what would have happened, had Thanos gotten a therapist before all of this started. Odds are, he would have been the same but on meds. "Your demise, I hope," Gamera replied, following Thanos as he started to walk towards the beginning of their end. With the next following minutes being drowned in nothing but silence. Eventually, however, the silence came to an end, as they reached the Red Skull's location, or the illusion of him for that matter. The illusion greeted them as cryptically as the Red Skull would have, starting the conversation, just like the original had done in the movies, starting to guide Thanos and Gamera to the top of the mountain, telling them stories of how all that have ever come for the stone have failed. As they neared the top, I could see Gamera tensing, sweat running down her forehead, as her eyes darted around, as if trying to find something, anything with what to stop Thanos from reaching the summit. I sighed, remembering a detail I had all but forgotten. She knew. Not of how the stone was acquired, but of the location. Keeping this place hidden was her way to stop him. For that reason she had destroyed the only map in existence to Vomir. She knew she would never have the power to stop him, not in a direct confrontation, so having this place erased from the stellar maps, was her victory, her last stand. Well, at least her one true desire would come true, Thanos' demise, at my hands, moments after her own. Focusing back on them, I looked as they reached the summit, trailing my illusion that guided them along the path. How is it that you know this place so well? Thanos asked, as my illusion continued to move forward. A lifetime ago, I, too, sought the stones. I even held one in my hands. But it cast me out, banished me here, enforcing upon me a punishment befitting my hubris. To be a pastor, guiding others to a treasure I cannot possess. My illusion replied, finally reaching their final destination, in more ways than one. Staring at the edge of the mountain, Thanos turned to my illusion and asked, "Where is it?" My illusion pointed towards the edge. "What you seek lies in front of you. As does what you fear. As it stands, nothing is ever free." "What's the price?" Thanos asked, looking down the mountain for a brief moment before taking a step back. "The Soul Stone holds a special place amongst the Infinity Stones. You might say it has a certain wisdom." "Tell me what it needs," Thanos pressed, his voice full of determination. "To ensure that whoever possesses it understands its power." "The stone demands a sacrifice," my illusion replied, eyeing Gamera without Thanos realizing. "Of what?" Thanos asked. "In order to take the stone, you must lose that which you love." At this, Thanos turned to face my illusion, shock bearing on his face. "A soul for a soul." I continued watching the events unfold following a similar path to that of the movie, while counting the seconds to have what I had come for. "In order to take the stone, you must lose that which you love." At this, Thanos turned to face my illusion, shock bearing on his face as the price became clear within his mind. "A soul for a soul." Without a word, Thanos turned to the edge of the mountain, gazing at the bottom grimly, as Gamera started to laugh in the back. "I kept this place a secret for nothing," Gamera chuckled. "All my life I dreamed of a day, a moment, when you got what you deserved. I dreamed of it, every single day." Thanos stood still, his eyes still gazing at the bottom of the mountain, as tears started to fall down his face, one after the other. I scoffed. The sight of him crying out of his sick understanding, his sick view of love, disgusted me. But, no matter how much I dreamed, I would always wake up in the same hell you put me through. "But now, the universe has judged you," Gamera smiled, gazing at him. "You asked it for a prize, and it told you no. You failed. And you wanna know why? Because you love nothing. No one." "I'm sorry," Thanos muttered, turning around. Tears streaking down his face. "Really? Tears?" Gamera scoffed, grinning at him. "They're not for him," my illusion stated. At this, Gamera glanced at my illusion, her smile evaporating in a matter of seconds, before she dropped her gaze in a look of realization. Taking a step back, her eyes flick to Thanos, who starts to walk towards her. "No," Gamera muttered, her voice broken, as she glared at Thanos in rage. "This isn't love. I ignored my destiny once. I cannot do that again." Thanos replied, gazing at Gamera with pain, with each word coming out of his mouth seeming to hurt him. "Even for you." Taking another step back, snowflakes stalked Gamera's face, the mist of Vomir crashing ever so slightly against her, almost as if welcoming her, sending a shiver down her spine as she stared at Thanos with a blank expression. "Never," Gamera muttered, staring into Thanos' eyes, pulling a dagger from her belt, before attempting to end her life, before he could. However, Thanos managed to stop her, grabbing both of her hands. thanks to me, as I had used my powers to slow her down just enough for Thanos to be able to react. No, Gamera muttered, as a resigned expression settled on her face, her eyes glassy. Pulling her into a hug, Thanos closed his eyes, as he muttered, I'm sorry, little one. Go to hell. Gamera barked, tears streaming down her face as Thanos broke the hug, holding both of her hands tight with one of his, as he walked towards the edge, dragging her. After all of this ends, I will try to bring her back. After all, she's the one giving me the stone, her life paying the price I refuse to. I owe her that much, I owe her at the very least trying. No. Gamera cried, struggling as Thanos dragged her, kicking him, biting him, doing everything in her power to stop him, his face clenching in anguish, not from her attacks, but of what he was about to do. I'm sorry, Thanos muttered one last time, throwing the one he claimed to love into the abysm. Her screams echoing across the mountain for a brief moment, before they came to an end with her helpless body finally reaching the bottom of the mountain, ending her agony. Seconds after this, I felt a pulse of cosmic energy, followed by a blinding flash of light that illuminated the entire sky briefly, with the Soul Stone slowly descending towards Thanos. It had to be done, Thanos muttered, his hand extending towards the stone in agony. Sadly, it had, I replied, putting a hand over his shoulder to make my presence known. Startled by my sudden appearance, Thanos turned around as fast as he could, stone at hand, staring at me before asking, who are you? Alex, my name is, YRSS, I replied, using my powers to alter my voice to sound just like Yoda. Or, most recently, him. I chuckled, pointing at my illusion, who waved at Thanos as I did, but, I suppose, more importantly, at least to you. I am the one holding the stones you are missing. At this, I extended my right hand forward, summoning the stones out of my inventory, for him to see. At this, Thanos glanced at my illusion for a brief moment, before turning to face me, his eyes dropping in a look of realization. You needed me to collect the last stone, Thanos muttered, the hand holding the Soul Stone clenching so hard, his knuckles were changing colors. You knew of my mission, and used me to bring you the last stone. Yes, the truth is, I would have never paid the price, so, I needed someone who could do what I couldn't, an idiot with a cause. I nodded, chuckling under my breath. You played your role exceptionally well, be proud of that. Without a word, Thanos lunged at me, his massive fist landing on my face with earth-shattering strength, before he threw another punch, and another, each one stronger than the last. Sighing, I flicked the purple giant in the forehead with a finger, sending his body flying towards the mountain in front of the one we were standing, a few miles away, creating a crater upon impact, before jumping towards him and asking, did you get that out of your system? Bleeding, and unable to move, Thanos simply stared at me in anger, before a look of resignation took over. Get it over with, but no, you have doomed the universe. I rolled my eyes at him, using a paw to take the stones from him. Please, you were never the hero, so drop out of that high horse. I mean, really. Killing half of all life to solve starvation. What kind of nonsense, Malthusian bullshit is that? Let me guess, you thought, with half the people gone, and the finite resources remaining the same, there would be more to go around. Surprise, surprise, your stupid sounding idea was stupid. I mean, that shit would never work. I paused, taking a deep breath. You know nothing, Thanos muttered in pain, coughing a huge amount of blood. Yes, I do, but your IQ is so goddamn low, you couldn't pour piss out of a boot if the instructions were on the fucking heel. Heck, you would probably erase half of the boot. I sighed, your solution was destined to fail because of how stupid it was. Your plan would have disrupted every major supply chain in the universe, you know, those things that bring the food to those who need it. Therefore, creating more starvation than there was before, to begin with. All because you woke up one day and decided, why not fuck the universe even more? I sighed, taking a deep breath, but enough about that, time to end this. You have killed Thanos. I blinked, poking Thanos with my foot. Well, I guess that's that. I really thought he had a few minutes left, but I guess I flicked him too hard. Killing Thanos had given perspective. Or rather, seeing him kill Gamora had given me perspective. In his own sick, corrupted way, he had truly loved Gamora. His delirious self, his vile sense of duty, had given me understanding. Understanding of my own situation, my own peril. I had gained insight into what I truly wanted, through his foul act in the name of love and duty. I didn't want justice. I wasn't a hero, not really. Sure, my actions had benefited others in a positive light, but only because it had benefited me, to begin with, one way or another. I was a hero of interest. True heroism was something beyond me. I wasn't fighting this war, I wasn't fighting Null for the Sake of the universe, but for my Sake, and what I sought to protect. I was fighting to protect my perfect world. My idea of it anyways. A world with my daughters. A world with my brothers. A world with my friends. That's what I truly wanted to protect. Nothing else, nothing more. Emily, Nat, Thor, Bucky, the Ancient One, and Sif. They were my whole world. For me the rest was sadly expendable. However, that didn't mean I wouldn't help others. It simply meant I had a very clear limit, a very clear line of what I would do for others outside that circle as long as it benefited me. I was a selfish man, and I was okay with that. I wanted power, to protect my family, and exclusively my family. I wanted the power to protect my ideal world. I wanted the power to protect my dream, my vision of what I aspired to in a perfect life. That was my purpose. The purpose I wanted to give my weapon. An instrument, a weapon, one to protect my dreams, my world, and my ideals. Thanos had given that answer about myself, his actions had given me perspective about who I was. Regardless of how stupid he had been, of how unforgivable his actions had been. He had truly cared for the universe as a whole, I could vouch for that as much as it sickened me. I knew his love for the universe to be true, I had read his mind as I insulted him about the flaws of his idiotic plan, and within his shattered excuse of a mind, I could see nothing but concern for the future of everyone if things continued the way they were going. Worry for the future of worlds he had never seen, for the future of people that hated him. Feeling it was his duty to save them all, no matter the cost. Because no one else would. His goal was noble, but his methods to achieve it were not. His psychotic sense of duty to the universe had made me understand a lot of things. I would have never made the sacrifices he was willing to make. Never. For me, my whole universe was comprised of 6 people. Only for those 6, I would give my all, only for those 6 I would be a hero, only for those 6 I would give my life without hesitation, and even then, I was selfish. I cared about Thor, Bucky, the Ancient One, and Sif a lot. I loved them, they were my family in a universe where I had none. But even then, if push came to shove, my daughters were the only ones I would cross any line for, and I mean any. The love I felt for them was unreal. Before everything started, before I came into this world, I never thought it possible to love someone more than life itself. I don't even remember when I started to love them that way. It just happened. One day, I was my only priority, and the next I woke up to see my whole world had shifted, making them my center. I wonder if all parents feel the same. I guess it's how they say. We never know the love of a parent till we become parents ourselves. How can I not love them? When I look into their eyes, what I see back is nothing but the purest love one can find in the whole universe. In their eyes, there was no judgment, there was no doubt, but an image of me so grand, so inconceivably beautiful, that I can't help but want to be that, the man, the hero, the everything they think I am. I would protect them. I would do everything in my power to keep them safe, above anyone else. Without expecting anything in return. I guess that's what true love is all about, the willingness to give without a thought of receiving anything in return. The point of all this being, that Thanos had helped me see what my real desire was. In a way, his unforgivable actions had given me the perspective I needed. I had seen in his decisions lines that I would never cross, and lines that if I had to, I would. Realizing that I hated him not because of the lives he had taken, but because of the lives he had given to his daughters, ones he claimed to love, for his resolve to kill them, if that brought him closer to his goal. Seeing the parallels between us made me understand myself. I wanted the power to keep those who I loved safe, to offer them a life they could truly live. To offer them peace, to offer them more than this wretched reality had given them. That was my desire, a simple one, but the one that pushed me forward. Everything else, especially that which went against what I held dear, I wanted to negate, to reject. I suppose I have my intent. I smiled, in my right hand holding the infinity stones that hovered around my open palm, creating a circular pattern of multicolored lights. Thinking, it was time to give the stones a new purpose, one beyond the limits of their respective realms. Having come to a full understanding of what I wanted, I stayed in the office, looking at the stones, their purpose, their new purpose becoming clear in my mind. It was simply a matter of taking action. Mr. Walker, I heard the Ancient One say, as a portal opened in my office, with her stepping through it. Hello, I waved at her, smiling while pointing at the stones in my other hand with a quick glance for her to see. You have them all, the Ancient One noted with a small smile. Now what, I wonder? I want to ask you something, I said, eyeing the stones before turning to her. When you gave the time stone, it was a loan of sorts, so, I paused, trying to find the right words. You want the time stone to be completely yours, right? The Ancient One replied, cutting me short. I nodded, a small chuckle escaping my lips. Was that obvious? It was. The Ancient One nodded. So? I asked. Alex, it was already yours, to begin with. To be quite honest, I never intended to return the stone to the Order, which pretty much goes against my purpose as the Sorceress Supreme. At least one of them. The Ancient One smiled, her eyes staring into mine. And before you think I'm doing this simply because of what you did for me. Rest assured, I had come to that decision before that happened, quite a bit before, because, without a doubt, you are the perfect person to hold the stones, at least in my eyes, that is. You are good but selfish, you are powerful but humble, and most of all, you really have no need for the stones. Eventually, you will outgrow whatever they give you. And as someone who doesn't require their power, you are the perfect guardian for them. I smiled, putting the stones in my inventory. Thank you. No need, but if you feel terribly inclined to thank me, you can do so by giving me more of that delicious tea we drank last time. The Ancient One smiled, walking towards me. Won't the Order rebel when they find out? I asked as she neared my desk. It's a possibility. The Ancient One nodded, musing over that thought for a brief second. But I'm not really that worried about that possible outcome. After all, I do have quite the team backing my corner. She smirked. Well, would you look at her, ha ha ha. Damn, right you do. Though I have to admit, I am surprised at your answer. I mean, you are implying that if push comes to shove, we will shove them 6 feet down. The Ancient One chuckled, shaking her head ever so slightly. I suppose I am. But not really. If that rebellion comes to happen, we can end it without any casualties. The perks of being vastly stronger than your opponent while caring for their lives. Battle becomes playing pretend. Like an adult taking a toddler to his room, the toddler doesn't have to like it, but what other option does he have? Good analogy. Then again, we can avoid any rebellions if I just give you a green rock full of cosmic power. I offered, as it was well within my capabilities to create that. Sure, I was a long way to be able to create something like the Infinity Stones, but I was strong enough to create something powerful enough to trick most beings. The Ancient One hummed, index finger pressed upon her lips. That sounds like a marvelous idea, to be honest, but no rush really. Their reactions are the least of our concerns right now. I nodded. That's true. Besides, even in the worst-case scenario, I doubt we will ever have a problem with the Order. The Ancient One smiled, summoning a book to her hand. Read the last page. Weird request, but okay, I nodded, grabbing the book, before opening it at the last page, my eyes widening in shock as I read what she had told me. Yep, the Ancient One smiled. I was without words. In the last line of one of the books I had copied from Cagliostro's library, it said the following. Cagliostro's last page. Alex Walker, my friend, if I am permitted to call you that. During your short time here, I learned a lot about you, about the world beyond the short span my life covered. I saw within you a world of doubts, yet no hesitation to move forward. I saw within you devotion to your goals, love for those you wanted to protect, and much more. You had the qualities of a great hero, and villain alike. A duality within you, operating in perfect symmetry. I was taken aback by it. Our short time together made me question a lot of things, a lot of what I considered to be true or not, and it made me realize that it was perhaps this duality that others needed. Good and evil, hate and love, each one can lead to a path of self-destruction. Everyone always allows one spectrum of this flag to define who they are, making everything a fine line between black and white. You were the first gray I encountered. Many claim to be gray in this spectrum of things, of life, but that's just how they see themselves, and sadly, more often than not, people never see themselves for what they truly are. I'm not sure how you see yourself, to be entirely honest. All I know is based on our time together. But I am certain that I know the real you, the one in symmetry with the spectrum that balances the moral compass of this broken universe. And for that, I trust you more than anyone I have ever met. It sounds ridiculous, I'm aware. But that's simply how I feel. Your duality made you more human than any human I have ever met, and that made me trust you. You are good enough to save others, but evil enough to understand not every life is worth salvation. You are good enough not to hurt others without reason, but selfish enough to protect what you consider yours without a reason. Your duality makes you the only being capable of truly understanding others. Of understanding every being on a deeper level than others, of making the decisions others simply can't. Because your own moral compass gives you the perspective of all sides of the spectrum, not only a half like it does for most. Some evils are necessary. Some goods are unnecessary. I'm not sure what you had to endure to become the man I got to meet, the man I grew to admire even though we shared but a few words. Had you stayed longer, I would have loved to hear your story, the story that forged you, Alex, a singularity of duality and symmetry. Perhaps, one day I will hear your story. After all, you can visit me at any time. In your power, you hold the time stone, given to you by one of us, a decision I praise with all my being. I used to think only the best of us, the greatest, were worthy of such power. Now, I find my reasoning lacking. Those that live in the light can fall into the shadows, and those that live in the shadows can eventually see the light. Don't worry though, while I am questioning a lot of things, I will keep everything the same, no need to alter time. After all, the world as I left it was wise enough to create you. A being living in a world full of shadows and light. So, Alex, if you are reading this, which I hope you are, never forget how rare you are. Never forget, you're worthy, unique, and incredible. Never allow your mind to wander untamed like a wild animal that exists on the basis of survival of the fittest. Tame your mind with consistent focus on your goals and desires. Whatever you do, enjoy it to the fullest. Do all that, and I am sure you will reach heights beyond your wildest dreams. Your friend, Cagliostro. End of Cagliostro's page. We barely spoke, I said after a few seconds of dead silence where I had read the page a few more times. Well, you leave quite the impression, the Ancient One replied. I read that page dedicated to you a few days after I came to the decision of giving you the stone, only to find out, Cagliostro himself, the first protector of the stone, considered you worthy of keeping it, before anyone else. She chuckled. He must be an excellent judge of character. It took me a year to completely trust you, yet, in the little time he spent with you, he came to the very same conclusion that took me a year to come with. I chuckled. Well, to be fair, you had to deal with modern humans more than him. The Ancient One smiled. The point is, everyone that has ever truly met you, believes in you. Yeah, I nodded, closing the book before giving it to her. I suppose I'm just that great. I chuckled. You are. The Ancient One nodded. Thanks, but you do realize, as that page says, I am no hero, I am a man, with selfish dreams, I replied. The Ancient One snorted, as I gave her a look. Oh my, you were serious with that question. Of course, I knew Mr. Walker, how could I not? I mean, what did you think I said when I said you were symmetrical in every way, spirituality speaking? I laughed. Good, I just wanted to make sure. Well, with that out of the way, let's get down to business, shall we? The Ancient One smiled, summoning another book. I nodded. What's the problem? I managed to find a way to get you control over Earth, without the use of force. Granted, for that to happen, someone wants to meet you, the Ancient One replied, putting the book she had summoned on my table. I looked at the book, and asked, who? The Book of Life. Gaia, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, however you want to call her, the Ancient One replied. She holds all the contracts to Earth, including the one from Asgard. She said she's willing to break all the other contracts, giving you an exclusive contract to the planet, if you meet her. I see, I replied, holding the book in front of me. When do we leave? Now, after all, it is how they say, you don't leave Mother Nature waiting, the Ancient One replied, opening a new portal. You really are watching a lot of movies, I chuckled. Well, your daughters are persuasive, the Ancient One replied as we both stepped into the portal. I stepped through the Ancient One's portal, to find myself in a leafy paradise, with trees as high as the tallest building I had ever seen, with every little bit of green being graced by the sun that seemed to kiss everything around with loving care. Not only that, but the moment I stepped into the place, I noticed something. The entire place was brimming with cosmic energy that somehow lacked all sense of hostility, or rather capability for hostility. It was welcoming, like a mother welcoming her child after a day of playing. "You feel it too, don't you?" the Ancient One said, reading my face. Yes, I nodded, looking around in awe, as the sounds of birds filled the air, creating a melody that was beyond captivating. I could actually hear the happiness in the chirps and sounds. It was surreal. "Well, let's not waste time," the Ancient One said. "Yeah, I will admire this place later," I nodded, opening my map to mark the place, finding it didn't appear in my map as part of anything in the universe, at least on my map, but instead as a pocket dimension newly discovered, the Garden of Gaia. I suppose it was obvious now that I think about it. "Let's go then," the Ancient One said as she started to lead the way towards Gaia. As I followed her through the dense forest, I continued looking around, hearing the old trees around creaking ever so slightly, as well as the crunch of twigs under my feet every once and a while, or the skittering of mice moving behind us in curiosity. The mice weren't the only ones trying to discreetly follow us. In fact, from what I could gather by eye only, some hares, birds, boars, mountain cats, mountain lions, and more were following us, trying to be as discreet as possible. What I found most curious was how they were all interacting together. More than once I had caught sight of a hare above a mountain lion, who seemed unfazed by the little critter taking a ride. "We are here," the Ancient One said, bringing me out of my little nature trip. "This place is beautiful," I commented, turning around to find myself in front of a small garden full of flowers and roses of all colors. In the back of that garden, there was a cozy-looking wooden house, one that seemed to be a tree that had grown just like that, as the house itself still had live branches with leaves brimming with life. It was that, or the tree had been hollowed out without damaging it at all, keeping the tree alive. "You came," I heard someone say, the voice sounding bright and captivating, almost as if every word coming out was part of a melody. "Mother Earth, I present you, Alex Walker," the Ancient One said, pointing at me with her hand. Before I could say anything in return, a woman came into view walking from behind the house a few feet away from me, holding some bags in her hands as she smiled our way in a warm way. Her skin was star shadow black and as smooth as a moonstone, her eyes were paradise gold, like two pods of liquid soothing light. Her hair was coral black and it was well kept above her shoulders in a floral arrangement. Her lips were puffy, pillow soft, of a red unique to her. Her teeth were sparkling, giving her an angelic smile. "Hi," I waved, blinking myself out of my trance. "Gaia LV 2051. She's quite powerful. Come." Gaia smiled, moving her hand to signal me she wanted me to come closer. "Well, this is where I leave," the Ancient One said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "She wanted to speak to you alone, so good luck." I nodded without a word, walking towards Gaia, as the Ancient One opened a portal back to my office. "I heard you wanted to speak with me," I said as I neared the goddess. "I did," Gaia nodded, signaling me to follow her inside her house with a simple tilt of her head. "Has the Ancient One told you why I seek to own Earth for the time being?" I asked, following her. She did, and I must admit, I never thought that old monster would wake up again. "Not this soon," Gaia replied, her voice carrying genuine concern as she looked down for a moment. "I remember the first war against him. I almost died during it. We were young back then, concepts without much power. We had just come to be, and found ourselves fighting. Me, and my siblings. How strong is Null compared to you?" I asked, seeing this as an opportunity to gauge the threat ahead. I mean, she was the only being I knew that had seen the King in Black, her and Arishem. Well, if I had to say," Gaia said, musing over the thought as she opened the door to her house. Stronger than me for sure, but my realms were never battle-oriented, to begin with, so I was always racing against the tide in any battle department. So I was still weaker than him. Great. I see, I guess I will have a tough time then, I replied, following her inside the house. Sadly, you will, Gaia replied, as she walked to what appeared to be her kitchen to put her bags down. This time, the war will mostly fall on your shoulders, as most of the elder gods that fought Null during the first war and survived have no interest in helping during this coming one. Mostly because they have nothing to lose, as long ago they reached a level of power where they can create their own dimensions, ones not connected to the one Null seeks to erase. Including you? I asked. Gaia smiled, a sad smile. I would love to help, I truly would, but I simply can't. As I am right now, it's well beyond my powers. During the first war against Null, I was pierced by the necro sword right through my leg as I desperately tried to dodge his attack. The wound didn't kill me, which on its own was a miracle, considering our realms are complete opposites. Nonetheless, the wound it inflicted upon me forced me into a life of imprisonment, with my essence tied to Earth, my first creation. I sighed. It's okay, thanks anyway. I finished with a smile. If we had more time, around a few million years or so before his awakening, I would be able to help you, Gaia added, opening a cabinet in her kitchen to pull 2 glasses. By that time, the anti-life energy that curses my wound like a pestering infection would have been gone. Anti-life? I asked. Yes, Gaia nodded, walking towards me with a glass full of water. His sword curses those cut by it with it, and depending on the nature of your powers, and where the wound is located, the wound can be healed, or it will pester you for a long time, like mine. Good, at least I can heal myself, I replied, grabbing the cup of water. It's not easy, Gaia replied, walking over to her living room as I followed her. Even if your powers, in essence, don't conflict with Null's, the wounds will remain. The only difference is, they won't take billions of years to be healed, as mine will. I see. Any advice? I asked. Well, ideally I would say don't get hit, Gaia sighed, taking a seat on a small wooden chair inside her living room. But, seeing as that seems like a hard-to-follow advice, I would say, if the wound is on a hand or a leg, cut it out, and regrow a new one. If the wound it's in place you can't cut, I would use this. At this, she extended her empty hand towards me, as a small bottle appeared right above her palm. Essence of Creation and Light, legendary item. It holds part of what remains of the first hero, the Life-Bringer One, a century of justice. Consuming a drop of this will heal anyone, from anything. Uses equals 10. I would recommend you use this only in the direst situations. I paid a lot for this, Gaia added, pushing the small bottle towards me. It's one of a kind, quite powerful. I nodded, grabbing the bottle, before putting it in my inventory. Thanks. Gaia smiled, pointing at the empty chair in front of her. Sit, please. Really, thanks, I repeated, taking a seat. No need to. This is for my own benefit as well. If Null wins, Earth will be consumed, which would eventually kill me, especially considering my life is tethered to Earth as I heal, Gaia replied, with a smile. Still thanks, I repeated. Now, that's not the only thing I have for you, Gaia said, summoning a piece of paper in front of me, that once I looked at it better, I realized it was a magical contract. I know enough to know it benefits me to have Earth under your control. The others will probably throw a tantrum over this, but don't worry, I'll deal with that myself. I said nothing, reading the contract from top to bottom while sending a copy to Jarvis and Ultron just to be sure. So far, it didn't say anything that I was wary of, but one could never know with these gods. Seems fine, Sir. Gaia is real. I will need more information later if possible. As for the contract, it looks direct enough. I nodded. Very well, I find this contract acceptable. Good. Gaia smiled, clapping her hands together. You can break out of it at any time, there's no breaking clause. So don't feel chained to it after the war, if you survive, that is. I chuckled, signing the contract in blood that stated I would protect Earth to the best of my abilities during the upcoming war, in exchange for getting ownership of the planet. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I have hopes you will win, Gaia added, but as you are now, you will die very fast. Especially fighting alone. By all means, you are stronger than I was back then, stronger than my siblings back then, but unlike you, we weren't alone. We had in our corner an army of gods, elder gods, celestials, and more, all together fighting Null. An army you don't have. I will find a way, I replied, giving her the contract for her to sign. I hope you do, Gaia nodded, dropping a drop of blood from her index finger into a contract. Earth has been added to your territory. I will, I replied. Sure, Null was stronger than me, but I would not give up. I would find a way to become stronger than him. I knew I would, I had faith I would, at the very least. Glad one of us is optimistic, Gaia chuckled, before her demeanor changed into a dark one. A piece of advice. Don't trust those who you do not know, they build their castles in lies born from the truth. Don't let the snakes fool you. Thanks, I will keep that in mind, I replied, turning around, ready to leave her realm, but freezing as my eyes caught sight of something. Gaia, Mother Earth. Her title had changed. I left Gaia's dimension, with a lot to think on. For one, her level had disappeared, leaving only a name with a title behind. Confused by this change, I questioned her, unable to hold my desire to understand what had happened, to which she replied with a sly smile on her face, the following. Information of any kind is power, Alex, and knowledge like power can be hidden quite easily, but remember, no matter what, there are three things that cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. All knowledge is reachable if you search hard enough. I left her home soon after, going back to my office, victorious, but worried. Her warning, and power to alter what I was able to observe, had given me a lot to consider. Did something happen? The Ancient One asked, a look of concern dawning on her face. Not really, not yet at least, I replied, my hands clenched together in front of my face in worry. I discovered a few problematic things. 1. Gaia was able to alter what I saw, and before today, I thought that to be impossible, but considering a lot of things I have come to understand after my meeting with her, I am quite certain now, she's only the third individual to trick me so far. The Ancient One narrowed her eyes in understanding them. Yes, I nodded. Normally, I wouldn't take that as a red flag, not entirely. That, however, changed. When I dissected how I felt around Gaia, I felt at home, welcomed, and happy, as if all my worries had been washed away by her mere presence. I was aware of my worries, yet, they didn't weigh on me, at all. Like Vest makes you feel, the Ancient One said, coming to the same conclusion I had come. Yes, I nodded once again. With Vest, however, the feeling of tranquility is more intense. But fundamentally what I feel, it's the same. That's indeed troubling, the Ancient One muttered. It gets worse, I replied, taking a deep breath. Before leaving, she gave me some advice. Telling me to not trust those who I do not know, for they build their castles in lies born from the truth. Considering how close my circle of interactions is, that either means, you guys will betray me, or them. Which leaves as the only logical option, them. The Ancient One concluded with a frown, before turning her gaze towards me. How much do you trust Gaia? Not a single bit, I replied, without a second thought. Our relationship is strictly one out of business. We both made sure to clarify that, stating our alliance was one out of mutual benefit. She cares for Earth, and wants Null dead, meaning that for the moment our interests align, which is why I am questioning a few things. I sighed. The girls are still with me, the Ancient One replied shortly. I know, I nodded, pondering what to do. Castles built in lies born from the truth, the Ancient One said, as if trying each word out, trying to decipher something in them. I find how she worded that out curious. How so? I asked. Well, if Vest and Adra are lying to you, they are using truths to do so, at least, according to Gaia's words, the Ancient One elaborated, meaning if our assumptions based on Gaia's warning are correct, they are tricking you with the truth. I find the entire concept confusing. Well, let's revise what we know about themselves, I replied, summoning a beer for me, and a cup of tea for her. They can't tell me their names, they hide their power, they say they want to help me, but can't because it would destroy what they seek to preserve. They say they want to protect my daughters. I think that's about it. Not a lot to analyze there, the Ancient One replied, taking the cup of tea I had summoned for her. If all I knew about them was a lie, that was also a truth. I got it, they aren't lying. Would you please elaborate on that? I'm still on the part they were lying, the Ancient One said, her eyes on me. I think they might be sleeping agents, I replied, elaborating on my theory. They aren't lying, because for them, what they say is the truth, until it isn't, which fits the entire lies built on the truth. It fits, the Ancient One nodded after a brief moment of silence, but sleeping agents for who? To be honest, I doubt them to be working under someone else if our theory proves to be true, I replied. Self-alteration, the Ancient One replied, her eyes darkening, meaning they will remain friendly until their goal is met. Yes, I nodded, my mind racing at the possibilities. What their goal is, I'm not sure. But from what I could gather in our talk, it includes me somehow, meaning the trigger to snap them back to their old selves by completing their task lies in me. At least one of them. That would also explain why they appear as friendly on your map, the Ancient One said, taking a sip of her tea. I nodded, already aware of all those implications. My power was good, but it had certain limits, like the one presented to me right now. Statuses could change, one moment someone could be my ally and the next they could be my enemy. It was all a matter of perspective and moment. For now, we won't do anything about them, I said after a moment, giving the Ancient One a look. I will however relocate the girls to a different location immediately, one that even if I die will ensure they live on. My plan was simple, sending the girls back in time, effectively putting them out of everyone's grasp. It was my best bet, with so many factors playing a hand, I had no way to truly keep them safe. Having them outside the present time was, in theory, my best option. It was a desperate move on my part, I knew that. But I truly had nothing else under my sleeve. I had no moves to play, no strategies to use, nothing. I was cornered, having a threat in every possible direction. Why don't you make a pocket dimension? The Ancient One said, if you tie your dimension to a physical beacon, it becomes unreachable, lest you allow others to reach it. Like Gaia. I muttered, thinking over how her dimension had only become reachable after I had entered it, with the entire thing basically operating like my dungeons from a basic point of view. With the only breach on my dungeons so far being the Beyonder, who was far, far beyond my level even now. Yes, the only reason we were able to enter her private realm was because she invited us. The Ancient One replied with a quick nod, otherwise, it would have been impossible to break in, at least in our current level of power. Now that I think about it, don't your dungeons operate like that? I laughed in joy, feeling a massive weight drop from my shoulders. Oh God, I feel so stupid now. The answer was right there, but I never considered it. To be fair, none of us did, the Ancient One replied, a small smile gracing her face. I simply made the connection after visiting Gaia's realm. The only way to breach one of my dungeons is if the individual is massively stronger than me. I nodded, and, even then, what dungeon will they breach? I have well over 5 million dungeons running with my leveling golems at the same time at any given time. It would take anyone trying to find them a long time. 5 million, the Ancient One repeated in shock. It takes an elder god a lot of power to sustain one realm, and you have 5 million realms. Just when I think I understand you. To be fair, those 5 million realms run a given course and then disappear, so maybe that helps. I offered. No, it doesn't. The Ancient One replied, giving me a deadpan expression. Taking action, I moved the girls to a low-level dungeon, one either of them could deal with ease. Setting a camping site with a fridge, some beds, a TV, a DVD player with every movie and series we owned, a library, a bathroom, Fernando, aka the Eternal Dog, Goose, and a few of my golems to be able to see them at any time. All comfortably set at the beginning of the dungeon, where there were no monsters, or anything. I also gave the girls clear instructions to stay put, as to avoid them clearing the dungeon out of boredom. After that, I said my goodbyes, telling them I would visit as often as I could, and that everything would be okay. Now, what do we do about the possible threats? The Ancient One asked, as we left the dungeon. Nothing, unless they ask. I replied, wondering how I would deal with them when the time came, if our most recent suspicions were anything to go by. Very well, the Ancient One nodded. In the meantime, I have a weapon to make, I added, walking out of my office, leaving the Ancient One behind. Good luck, Mr. Walker. I heard in the distance as I walked away. Before crafting my weapon, I needed to do something first. Nothing big, or too time costly, I simply had to equip the stones. If my interactions with the other stones were anything to go by, there was a big chance equipping the stones would give me something, by completing a hidden quest or achievement. Here goes nothing, I said, equipping all the stones at the same time, to save time. You have equipped the Infinity Stones. Reality Stone. Reality is within your grasp. +8 7321615616181 EXP. You have level up. 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 A new skill has been created equals reality warping. Reality warping, active, LV1 equals. Users can create, shape, and manipulate reality, by overwriting, erasing and rewriting reality, the sum or aggregate of all that is real or existent within a system, just by thinking about it. Depending on how powerful the user is, and how leveled the skill is, the range of what the user can manipulate will increase. Current limitations equals as of the moment, the user is limited to alter that what is real, requiring already exciting matter to make any change. The changes are limited to what the user can power with his own energy or comprehend. So the skill is useless for the moment. Mind Stone, the powers of a trained mind. +9 65759177131 EXP. You have level up. 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 Telekinesis has leveled up 999 times. Telepathy has leveled up 999 times. Telekinesis has reached max level. Telepathy has reached max level. A new skill has been created equals cosmic awareness. A new skill has been created equals precognition. Cosmic awareness, passive, LV max equals. With this skill, the user is now aware of anything that on a universal scale including planets being destroyed, threats, and / or anything that would affect them in any way. Precognition, active / passive, LV1 equals. This skill allows the user to perceive up to 5 seconds into the future, and in need, it can automatically activate to warn the user when his life is in danger. Cost equals 100,000 MP / S. Holy fuck, that's one expensive skill to use, energy-wise. But, one very good, if used well, it could give me an edge against Null. Soulstone, the essence of one. +9 9875324578994 EXP. You have level up. 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 Soul casting has leveled up 999 times. Soul Blast has leveled up 999 times. Soul Manipulation has leveled up 999 times. Spiritual Force Manipulation has leveled up 999 times. Soul Casting has reached max level. Soul Blast has reached max level. Soul Manipulation has reached max level. Spiritual Force Manipulation has reached max level. A new skill has been created equals the truth of it all. True truth of it all, passive / active, LV1 equals. The user is now completely aware at all times of the true reality around them, seeing what others can't hide, as the eyes of the soul reveal the truth of it all. Nothing can be hidden in their eyes, with them seeing through environmental, sensory and / or mental illusions with ease, for their eyes only see the truth. Current limits equals the user needs to have eye contact with the target for at least a complete second. The truth of it all, well ain't that convenient. I wonder if it will show me who those two are, it's worth a shot at the very least. Hidden quest completed. Equals the power of the stones. You have done what many before you have tried, and failed. Collecting and equipping all of the stones, showing those before you, who stands at the top. Rewards equals the boons of the Living Tribunal x90. The boons of the Living Tribunal, I still haven't used those. The boons of the Living Tribunal x120. I have 120 levels right there. Without counting the 21 I just got equipping the stones. Stats. Name equals Alex Walker. Race equals unknown / celestial. Title equals the gamer. Occupation equals King of the Nine Realms, in progress. Ranking equals 97th. Level equals 2016. EXP equals 17.5% / 100%. HP equals 489,007,500 / 489,007,500. MP equals 557,740,000 / 557,740,000. STR equals 960,070, plus 384,028. equals 1344098. Vit equals 978,015. Definite equals 751,289. DEX equals 779,325. Int equals 1115,480. Char equals 267,894. Wis equals 1115,478. Will equals 5998215. Per equals 576,456. LUK equals 10,000. Stat points equals 25,012. Money 43,020,785,212.05 Well, time to craft my weapon. As much as I enjoy seeing my power grow, I have things to do. Null wasn't gonna kill himself. The stones had served their purpose, it was time they served a new one. In the middle of a dead galaxy devoid of all life, one located a few billion light-years away from the Milky Way. I moved around, finding the right spot. What I was about to do required steeled concentration, and massive amounts of power, which is why I had picked this particular place. Right here, I said, my eyes scanning the area one last time, as I confirmed yet again, that the closest living organism was a few million light-years away. I was free to do as I pleased in this void. I had selected this place for one reason, and one reason only, to craft my weapon. No forge in the universe was strong enough for what I required. I needed more than a dying star. I needed a hypergiant, a star 700 times bigger than Earth's sun. Even with my powers, this was no easy task. In fact, it was nearly impossible to achieve, even as a celestial. While it was true the celestials had the power to create life, planets, stars, and much more, it wasn't something they did overnight. It was all a matter of mass equal power. The bigger the mass an object required, the more time said thing required to be created. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to use my celestial powers to do so. I would use the Infinity Stones for that. With them, I would be able to create the hypergiant I required, in a matter of seconds. Sadly, this would hurt me quite a bit. You see, the Infinity Stones had a few glaring limitations, so to speak. They were able to do anything for the most part, which was great, but they sucked at creation while excelling at destruction. By this I mean, it was easier to use them to destroy all life, than to create the same amount of life from nothing. The reason why was simple. The Infinity Stones followed a certain rule very tightly. The rule that states that matter cannot be created or destroyed, it can only be transformed. For example, when Thanos used the stones to kill half of all life, he didn't erase them, in the true meaning of the word, he simply altered their matter to a different state and form, effectively killing them, but not destroying them. He simply turned people into dust. When Hulk used the stones, he brought the matter Thanos had altered back to their original state. All of this was nothing but a case of matter being transformed, as the matter itself never left the universe, it simply changed shapes. Now, the thing about rules is, you can break them, but it always comes at a cost. In the stones case, about my particular case, creating a hypergiant from nothing would bring upon me heavy consequences, as the stones would use my power to fill the lack of matter to transform. Normally this wouldn't matter, as I had stated before, celestials do have the power to create things, it simply takes time, but that's the thing, because the stones would use my power to create something that would normally take years to shape, my body would be put into a rather hard strain. Nonetheless, I was confident I had more than enough power to take the hit. Well, here goes nothing, I muttered, equipping all the stones, before focusing on my intent, creating a hypergiant. As I did, I started to feel a little shiver down my spine, as the stones quivered, my power synchronizing with them. Cosmic energy insufficient. Stones rerouting energy deficiency to HP. HP and cosmic energy sufficient for transfer. Fuck, I muttered, reading the notifications, my eyes widening as 80% of my HP vanished. Before I lose consciousness, I opened my eyes again 15 seconds later. My HP, working its way up, as well as my MP, my entire body feeling extremely sore, like I just had worked out in the gym. That felt worse than I imagined. I sighed, my eyes landing on the hypergiant I had created. Even from very afar, it looked bigger than Earth's sun. Time to start working. All right then. In front of the hypergiant, I reached my hand forward to feel things out, pulling my hand back when the massive star had started to burn it. My skin slightly reddened. This will be more difficult than I expected, I muttered with irritation. Even while using my powers to coat my body, the star was hot enough to harm me. Sure, I was protected enough to be literally inches away from it, but touching it was like diving my hand in lava. I required more power to coat myself, but if I used more power, I would lack the amount I needed to craft the weapon. What a fucking conundrum. Maybe I can do what I did before. I mean, I had more than enough HP to spend, so maybe I could use some to compensate for the time being. I mean, it would certainly use less HP compared to how much I needed to create the hypergiant. Time to use the stones again. Equipping the stones once again, I focused on creating a shield around me with enough power to allow me to dive into the hypergiant's core without bursting into flames, one that would fade upon release by me, and that would only use my HP and MP as power sources, balancing between the two, instead of the stones. Star Suit, buff, LV max equals. It allows the user to dive into stars without getting harmed. However, the amount of time the user can do such it's directly connected to how much HP and MP the user has. Gold, I muttered, seeing my new protective coat, covering every inch of my body in a light golden glow. I can probably sustain this baby for a few hours before my HP enters a critical zone. Now, it was time to really get working. I had a weapon to craft, and little time to waste. Once I reached the hypergiant's core, I started to craft random things, to increase my crafting level as much as possible, which was remarkably easy to do, considering I had a crafting EXP bonus of around plus 2000% EXP. Each miscellaneous item or weapon gave me around 20 levels or so, and seeing as I was able to craft at least 5 weapons per minute, I was getting around 100 crafting levels a minute. I continued doing this for 30 minutes or so, reaching a point where crafting wasn't giving me that many levels, considering this an appropriate point to shift my focus back to my original goal, crafting my weapon. Let's fucking do this, I said, pumping myself up, as I took my ingredients out, in the following order: the fragment of the universe, the reality stone, the time stone, the power stone, the mind stone, the soul stone, and the space stone, placing them in front of me, extending my protective coat to them to a lesser extent, letting them heat up until they could be worked out. When everything was sufficiently hot, I poured my energy into the materials, feeling the pullback the stones were giving, fighting against their reshaping and alteration of motive. The entire process of giving the stones a new purpose was demanding in every sense of the word. I wanted them to keep their realms, but I also wanted to change them, to make out of them something new, and that very intent was a feat impossibly hard to achieve. Not because it required a lot of power, which it did, but because it required total concentration, Even the slightest mistake could result in the end of all life. It was a struggle of power, of me reshaping them, while also containing them, a constant pull for control, between me and the fundamental forces that ruled this universe. In fact, the very skills that represented those forces were leveling up because of this struggle. Fundamental force, strong force, has leveled up. Fundamental force, weak force, has leveled up. Fundamental force, electromagnetic force, has leveled up. Fundamental force, gravitational force, has leveled up. Fundamental force, strong force, has leveled up x2. Fundamental force, weak force, has leveled up x2. Fundamental force, electromagnetic force, has leveled up x2. Fundamental force, gravitational force, has leveled up x2. Fundamental force, strong force, has leveled up x14. Fundamental force, weak force, has leveled up x14. Fundamental force, electromagnetic force, has leveled up x14. Fundamental force, gravitational force, has leveled up x14. Fundamental force, strong force, has leveled up x11. Fundamental force, weak force, has leveled up x11. Fundamental force, electromagnetic force, has leveled up x11. Fundamental force, gravitational force, has leveled up x11. A lot, they were leveling a lot, to the point I had turned my skill notifications down. I continued doing this, for an hour or so, until the stones and the fragment finally gave in to my intent, my desire, all of them mixing together into a singular substance. Now it was time to shape it all. Using a hammer made out of energy, I began pounding on the combined substance of my materials, slowly shaping the entire thing together into one. I continued doing this for another good hour, with my protective coating losing its power more and more, the heat of the start burning me with each passing second as my MP and HP neared critical levels, to which I used some of my potions to level things out back to an acceptable range, as I continued pounding. Once I was satisfied with the mixture, I dissipated the hammer, extending both of my hands towards the substance, before beginning to pour once again my energy into it. Intent clear in mind. A weapon to protect my dreams. A weapon to negate that which threatens what I love. A weapon nobody but me could use. A weapon like me, selfish, caring, and able to grow. Then, almost as if answering to my wishes, a blinding burst of light engulfed the entire area, swallowing the hypergiant and more. Quest completed. Equals the weapon of a god. With war drawing closer, you can feel the darkness lurking at every corner, as you feel the weight of everyone's lives lay upon your shoulders. It is more than clear you need a weapon worthy of a god, to guide those who oppose the old order of things. A weapon capable of opposing the god-killing monstrosity that is all black, Null's weapon, a weapon specifically forged to slay divine beings. Objectives equals craft a weapon of unmatched power using the fragment of cosmos within your possession. Hidden objectives equals use the infinity stones as materials. Rewards equals the weapon of a singularity, ring of miracles. Hidden rewards equals essence of destruction and death x10. A new weapon has been crafted. Serenity, the weapon of rejection and dreams. Item class equals unique. A weapon crafted in the heart of a hypergiant, born in the flames of conviction, and shaped by the dreams and hopes of a man. This weapon holds two unique special powers. Negation, active, LV1 equals the power to negate a reality that you can't accept. With enough mastery over this power, the wielder of this weapon can achieve supernatural feats such as rejecting aspects of reality. With this, the user can become indestructible by denying physical damage, or alter reality by denying the laws of physics, and even become immortal by denying death/aging. Dreams of aspiration, active/passive, LV1 equals the power to create a path to your dreams. With enough mastery over this power, the user of this weapon can manipulate probability, meaning the user could alter how likely an event is to occur, making unlikely things occur more often or instantly and preventing liable events from ever happening. Giving the user the ability to cause and prevent both good and bad luck, sudden deaths, natural disasters, and even apocalyptic events. This weapon also holds control over the 6 realms the Infinity Stones held control: space, power, time, reality, mind and soul. This weapon possesses no permanent form or shape, meaning is ever changing and ever shifting. The user can will the weapon to change into anything, making the weapon scatter and reform at will. Soulbounded to Alex Walker. When equipped, the following buffs apply: equals plus 100% increase to STR, plus 100% increase to VIT, plus 100% increase to Definite, plus 100% increase to DEX, plus 100% increase to INT, plus 100% increase to CHAR, plus 100% increase to WIS, plus 100% increase to WILL, plus 100% increase to PO, plus 100% increase to LUK. I smiled, my hands burned to the bones, as I looked at the weapon floating in front of me. It looked almost like water, like how the reality stone had looked before I had given it form, but instead of red like the ether, what laid in front of me was blue, moving like one would expect water to move in space. I laughed, looking around as I whistled in admiration. Not bad. The hypergiant was gone, almost as if it had never existed, to begin with, destroyed by my weapon's birth. Thor Odinson POV. I wonder how stories will depict me. I doubt as a hero, not anymore at least. In my quest to save the 9 realms and their people, I had so far done many terrible things. I didn't regret any of them, not really. If anything, I lamented that the ignorance of others had pushed me to do things I would have never done in the first place. Necessary evils, like my brother says. It's impressive how things change. I used to enjoy fighting and killing my opponents without thinking of the consequences. Now, the actions that once brought me joy now bring me sorrow. I guess I was blissful in my ignorance. Playing like a child, the game of a hero. I still saw myself as a hero. The difference now was, I was aware of the consequences of my actions, because I knew more. I had grown more in the time I have been with Alex, my sworn brother, than I ever did by myself. I could now appreciate the weight he carried very clearly. I admired him, and not because of his powers, but because of his character and unwavering determination. I aspired to be like him where it mattered. I used to think, before meeting him, I was the man, the pinnacle of what everyone should aspire to be, the mightiest of them all. But, in reality, before meeting him, I was a kid. His actions made me see that being male was simply a matter of birth, while being a man was a matter of choice. He made me understand that a man knows his limits, but a real man can overcome them. For that, and much more, he was my brother. His actions had shown me that a true hero does not always get love and ovations, but hate and misunderstandment. Why would you do this? A Vanir guard asked, anger coloring his eyes as he laid on the ground wounded. Our king trusted you. Your king was a fool, I replied, my tone even. his pride would have been the end of Vanaheim, and all of its people. Liar! The guard shouted. I am many things, but a liar am not, I replied, grabbing the blood-covered crown from the king's head. I know you don't believe me, and I don't need you to. No. I am trying to protect the 9 realms from a threat I can't possibly match. The people of Vania will never follow you. The guard growled, a small smile on his face. I don't need them to, I replied, smiling sadly at the thought. Then why did you kill my uncle? I heard someone ask in the back, as the creaking doors of the throne room opened. Turning around to meet this unknown, I saw a woman and a few guards, arms at hand, ready to die for their people. Would it really change your mind? I asked, pointing at her sword. Answer the question, she pressed defiantly, her eyes burning. I sighed, magical territory. By taking control over Vanaheim, my brother can control, so to speak, who enters and leaves the planet, making it really difficult for the enemies that are about to come, actions such as invading the planet. You lie. One of the guards behind her spat. Who is this enemy you speak of? She asked, shutting the guard behind her with a look. Null, I replied, my eyes resting on Vanaheim's crown, as drops of blood from the previous king fell into the floor. I doubt any of you know of him. He's far older than our universe, and was defeated before the 9 realms came to be, but rest assured, he's very real, and he's coming for everyone. He's a monster without allies, without compassion. His only goal is to destroy all in creation, to usher a new era of darkness, true darkness, without life, without death, a universe of nothing. If that monster is as old as you say he is, then how did you come to know of him? She asked. I know someone nearly as old, I replied with a smile, as technically my brother was as old as the universe, even if he didn't remember it. You may know of him as the newest prince of Asgard, most recently king. You gave your birthright to him? She asked, her eyes narrowing. Of course I nodded, as I told your uncle many times before. The outcome you see in front of you, I lack the power to defeat Null. My brother, the king once prince of Asgard, is vastly stronger than me, and even he is not sure if he can defeat him. So painfully aware of my own weakness, I decided to give him all the 9 realms, temporarily, to avoid them falling into Null's hands. I don't believe you, child, I heard a new voice scoff, as someone entered the room. An old-looking man, covered in scars, his entire posture and demeanor screaming he was a seasoned warrior. Your story feels like a fairy tale. I guffawed at his comment. You are right, it does sound like a fairy tale, but believe me, it's the truth. Once this war ends, all the realms will return to their people completely. Believe me, I don't want to rule, hell. I don't even want to rule Asgard. Why would I expand? Enough talk, let us dispose of him. The guards growled, their voices coming as one. No, the woman who had first entered said, commanding her troops to stand down. He has the power to kill us all. Fighting against the All-Father is a futile endeavor. But Lady Amalista, you can't be suggesting we bow to him. Amalista, I like that name. No, she's suggesting we give him the benefit of the doubt, at least before we throw our lives away fighting him, the old man replied, eyeing Amalista. Indeed, General Adric, for now, I will trust his words to be the truth. Amalista nodded, before narrowing her eyes on me. That, however, doesn't mean Vanaheim will forgive what you did today. We will seek unyielding retribution after the war with Null, even if that means the end of our people. So when the time comes, you will have to decide between paying for your crimes, or killing us all. I do not intend to run from my actions, Lady Amalista, I replied, my tone firm, without a shred of doubt. when the time comes, I will face the consequences of my actions like a true warrior should, but be warned, you might have to get in line to get a piece of me. My crimes as you describe have barely just begun, and others just like you will seek retribution. Very well, Amalista replied, her voice cold. For now, we will play your game. When does this null comes? Adric asked. That, we don't know. We only know it's very soon, I replied with a sigh. Then, we require to speak with this. Alex, you speak of, Amalista said, or rather ordered in a commanding tone. I liked her, sadly, the sentiment wasn't shared. Sure, I nodded, I will tell him to come, after I finish my mission. Sif POV. I thrusted my blade forward, sweat glistening around me, as the air in front of me seemed to burst in a silent explosion, perforating a hole of about 30 inches in a wall 100 meters away from me. Not enough, I panted, my hands bleeding ever so slightly as I got into position once again. I was far from over. Impressive, I heard the distinctive voice of Hela in her child form chuckle as she entered my personal training room. What are you doing here? I asked, continuing with my training. Nothing really, Hela replied, grabbing one of the wooden training blades that lay on the floor, but now that I see you, I might as well help you out. I frowned, gripping the handle of my blade so hard my hand was turning stark white. I do not require of your assistance, I replied, keeping my tone even. Under normal circumstances, you would be absolutely right, Hela replied without missing a beat, but right now, we can't be too picky, can we? I sighed, glancing at the sweat-forward/blood-covered ground around me. It pained me to admit it, but she was right. What do you seek, Hela, and please go straight to the point. To be completely honest, darling, I'm no longer sure what, Hela replied, dangling the wooden sword around her hands as she looked down with a neutral smile. But I suppose, I seek to help everyone this time around, as unbelievable as that sounds. I looked at her and sighed. I didn't trust her at all, considering her not deserving of redemption, but at times I found myself asking if that was merely out of spite, because of her blatant pursuits for Alex's attention. She had done way less than Loki, at least to us, and yet, I entertained the idea of Loki's redemption more than hers. Perhaps it was because I had known Loki all my life, and her I barely knew. At least that's what I told myself, because I didn't want to even consider the possibility I was letting something so pathetic as petty jealousy steer my judgment, setting a glaring bias in my reasoning. Very well, I nodded, head high as a tired sigh escaped my lips. As much as I don't like you, your experience speaks for itself. Hela grinned, glancing at me, flattering, but not entirely accurate, at least, not anymore. In my time, wars were fought against armies and strategies. Now, things are gaining a new shade I didn't expect. She chuckled, I might be stronger than you, without the seals Alex put on me, of course, but I fear in the face of what is about to come, I am just as inexperienced as you. I chuckled, bearing a challenging grin as I pointed at her with my blade. Are you sure you are still stronger than me? Without a doubt, darling, I might be a lot of things, but a fool I am not, Hela replied without missing a beat, bearing a confident smile. If I learned anything during my many fights and wars, was how to gauge someone's power in regards to mine. Then let's test how accurate you are, I replied, deciding to tell Alex to break her seals. I didn't trust her, but a warrior of her caliber would be of great help during the war coming up, and as things were, we didn't have the luxury of keeping able hands out of this. Darling, if my childlike appearance wasn't enough of a giveaway, I must remind you, my powers are sealed, Hela replied, before immediately grinning in realization. You plan to ask Alex to free me, don't you? Not quite, I plan to ask Alex to put you on parole, I replied, my eyes fixed on her. While it's true I don't trust you at all. We need every able warrior to assist, and you alone have the power of an army. My, so many compliments in a day, Hela replied. Don't push your luck, I replied, hurling my blade towards a wall behind me, lodging the blade deep in the wall, leaving nothing but the handle out. Alex Walker POV. I pushed myself off the ground, scarcely dodging the attack of a demon before lunging at the beast with Serenity in blade form, cutting the demon in half. Abaddon's servant slain 789745441 EXP gained. Fuck, I panted, sweat dripping down my forehead, as I dropped to the ground with one knee. Soon after I had crafted Serenity, I had decided to train, for the sake of familiarizing myself with my new weapon, discovering soon enough how physically taxing Serenity was. Serenity's description as an item had said nothing about it, so I hadn't expected such developments, but I suppose in hindsight it was to be expected. The weapon itself doubled all of my stats by simply equipping it, creating a strain on my body. Nonetheless, the strain Serenity was putting on my body made no sense. If I considered prior experiences, I had, after all, had bigger increases in stats before base-wise, without pushing my body at all, which brought me to my second guess, energy consumption, and affinity. I had gotten Serenity a day ago, and since I had started my training with it, I had come to learn a few things. 1. Serenity used a lot of MP, like a lot. To put into perspective, 12 hours ago I was only able to use Serenity for 3 minutes before running out of MP. 2. The handling of Serenity was considered a skill of its own by my power, one that had taken 12 hours to appear since I started training. Serenity, weapon skill, passive, LV57 equals. Allows the user to freely handle Serenity better. 171% increase in energy consumption efficiency. Affinity LV1 equals plus 1% increase to all weapon buffs. Right now, I was able to use Serenity, constantly, for 8 minutes and 12 seconds before running out of MP. Which was exactly a 171% increase in efficiency compared to where I started, in terms of time and energy consumption at least. Another curious thing I had discovered was that the weapon skill was evolving, so to speak, with the affinity part of the skill only coming after I had reached LV50 with the weapon skill, as well as increasing the skill efficiency multiplier from 2.5% per weapon level skill to a 3% per weapon level skill. I think it was safe to assume every 50 levels or so with Serenity's weapon skill, things would get better. My point being, that this explained the energy part of my strain, but it didn't explain the physical part of it, at all. I knew the difference between physical strain and energy strain, and I was sure I was feeling both. I guess I will learn as I go, I muttered, wiping the sweat from my face with a hand. However, before I could stand up, something about the size of a car shot toward me at a blinding speed, biting me on the arm. Fangs sunken in my flesh, I cursed in pain under my breath before slamming the creature on the head, pulling my blooded arm out of its grasp, before morphing Serenity into an M1851 Wolfsburg Magnum, and shooting at the beast in the head from point blank, erasing the creature in a blast. Abaddon's Hunter slain 89171741 EXP gained. Fucking demons, I muttered, shaking my injured arm a bit as it healed. The worst part of this dungeon wasn't that the monsters were around my level, but that they had the ability to cloak themselves out of my minimap, which at times, fucked my reaction time. But it is what it is. I needed to train, and this seemed like the best possible dungeon to do so, considering Null's theme. I wonder if Asmodeus' dungeon will be like this. I guess I will see after this one. I wonder how the demons these dungeons are based of would feel if they knew these simulations were infinitely stronger than them. I mean, the real Asmodeus was level 202, while his dungeon was level 2015. I chuckled, putting Serenity on my inventory as I walked to the next zone within the dungeon. Alex Walker POV. It was deep in the night within Abaddon's dungeon, with the moon over halfway down the sky, as I neared the boss. After having walked through many rooms and such, defeating several demons, increasing my weapon skill by 20 levels. Becoming evidently clear that the more I continued to train and use Serenity, the easier it was becoming to increase the weapon level skill. The first level took me more than an hour. Now, in a matter of minutes, I had leveled up the skill a few times. Not only that, but I think I had also discovered why using Serenity strained my body physically speaking. Basically, my running theory was that Serenity basically operated like any part of my body, and that by being a new addition to my already trained body, it was taking time to adjust. In summary, I was simply pushing the newest addition to my body too hard too soon for its liking. Sadly for Serenity, I would continue to push until there was no more need of pushing. So, according to the map, Abaddon should be right around here, I muttered, as I arrived at an empty clearing, where the Abaddon the boss was supposed to be. Yet, he wasn't anywhere to be found. I guess I have to trigger something for him to appear. Abaddon, I fucked your mom. Nothing. Well, there goes the oldest internet insult, and so far, plan A. Maybe I needed to piss on his clearing or something. Sighing, I elected to walk deeper into the clearing, hoping that perhaps proximity would be the trigger Abaddon needed to appear. Which seemed to be the case, for as soon as I reached the middle of the clearing, everything around me started shaking violently as a piercing shriek filled my ears. Note to self, bring headphones next run, I commented, using a thin layer of mana to protect my ears. I will enjoy tearing you to ribbons. I will enjoy farming your ass repeatedly, I replied, chuckling at my own joke, as in front of me, something slowly started to appear, accompanied by a fair amount of shadows. At first, Abaddon seemed to have no form or discernible shape, but as it materialized more and more, his appearance became clearer: bones, wings, rotting flesh, and shadows entangling his body, creating a picture of horror. Abaddon the Demon of Destruction, LV 2075. I am Abba, he started, pointing his rotting finger covered in shadows at me, as he began his introduction. However, I cut him short, delivering a series of masterful attacks with Serenity in blade form, before blasting him away with a beam of pure mana. Don't care, I said, cracking my neck. To me you are nothing. Insolent worm. Abaddon hissed, standing up from the ground. Hands aimed at me, spasming uncontrollably, as they grew in size, humming and buzzing like bugs in a bucket. You, I muttered, rushing towards him, morphing Serenity into the shape of a war hammer. However, before I could reach Abaddon, his fingers flew off his hand with a loud wet slimy ripping sound, flying toward me like missiles, with each finger breaking into several projectiles, 200 to be exact. You, again, I muttered under my breath, as with a single wave of my arm, I created a shockwave that pushed the projectiles off their tracks, with some of them landing on the ground or distant walls, rotting the surfaces they had landed on, creating sizable pools of what appeared to be oil. Abaddon's pool of infection. Abaddon infects the area with a disease, dealing 1% of total HP per second as long as the player is touching an infected area. I wonder how the skill would have worked if it had hit me. Pushing that thought aside, I moved behind Abaddon, ducking under a swipe of his elongated arms, before delivering a horizontal strike to his side, generating a massive shockwave of cosmic power, moments before the demon was sent flying like a ragdoll, only stopping when a wall of rocks slowed him down. I whistled. So far, Serenity had proved to be an amazing weapon, both in melee and in range combat, all thanks to its absurd versatility, and the best part was, I had just barely begun really feeling the weapon out, meaning, the possibilities were endless. I guess I can try using the skills the weapon has, haven't used them much so far. Insolence is paid in blood, in the house of Abaddon. Abaddon shrieked, his right morphing into a thin blade, before giving his arm a quick wave downwards. I get it, you are Abaddon. I stopped what I was saying, pushing my body to the side as fast as I could, as the entire clearing was cut in two, from Abaddon's attack. Had it not been for precognition, automatically activating a second before Abaddon's attack reached me, I would have been cut in half, or at the very least I would have lost a leg or something. That's one dangerous skill. Demon Blade. Abaddon empowers his blade by extending the cutting edge of it, gaining the ability to cut through anything in his line of sight. It cannot be blocked by any defense. You are only delaying the inevitable, child. Abaddon hissed silently, his other arm morphing into a blade. Accept destiny. He added, as, without another word, he took a step forward, swinging his arms around without a pattern, almost like a child playing pretend, sending hundreds of attacks I couldn't see my way. This time, however, I activated precognition, instead of letting the skill activate on its own, getting a peek into the future, allowing me to evade his attacks as they came while pushing my advance toward him. Reaching him in a matter of seconds, I shot my hands forward, grabbing both of his arms mid-swing, before smiling, ordering Serenity to scatter into thousands of tiny rotating blades, surrounding him. My turn. I muttered, ordering the blades to descend upon him, tearing him apart like a meat grinder, as I jumped back, avoiding his blood. Keeping my guard up, reforming Serenity into a shield as I waited for Abaddon's next move. After all, I had yet to see his EXP being given to me, or the dungeon notification of completion. Where are you, fucker? I don't have all. Once again, I stopped mid-sentence, ducking under an attack my precognition had seen, as I turned around to see Abaddon reforming. Seeing my chance, I darted towards him, morphing Serenity into a hand blaster that wrapped around my hand, before releasing a torrent of violent energy, using negation on the blast, with the clear intent to negate his existence. For a very, very brief moment, Abaddon's form remained, straining under the blast, before being completely vaporized under it. In what seemed to be an instant, his existence effectively negated as a notification popped into my system. Abaddon the Demon of Destruction slain. 573216156165 EXP gained. You have leveled up. 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 6 levels, that's. I smiled, taking a step forward before dropping to my knees, collapsing in the ground with a thud. I really need to improve the energy drain of this thing. I panted with a tired smile, unequipping Serenity. Null POV. I could already hear my tools, my minions whispering through the hive mind, like 1,000 stars dying at the same time, chirping with oscillation for my coming. The time was near. I could feel it, taste it, coursing over my entire body, as the shackles that kept me in this prison weakened with each passing second. They would soon shatter into nothingness. I would soon reclaim my freedom, and when I did, I would usher in a new era of darkness, a universe without life, without death, without anything but me. The only one that stood in my way was Alex. If left unchecked, that man, that thing, could threaten the natural order of things, and that I would not allow. His death was detrimental for my plans to work. At one point, I sought to use him. After all, his potential for growth was unprecedented, beyond comprehension and logic, and in more capable hands, mine, his power would go beyond any lines. However, recent events have proved that taking over his body, or manipulating him into servitude are no longer viable options. Especially taking into account there were other beings after his power, and what it entailed having it, the unique chance to overthrow the one above all. With others hunting him down, and my own means of takeover being no longer doable. His eradication was key, as it had turned into the only logical path for this undesirable development. If others could use him, I simply had no use for him, beyond having all black consume him, that is. In hindsight, I should have seen this unwanted turn of events coming. His powers, and his unparalleled potential for unlimited growth, were unique, a singularity without cause. A ticket to become the one true God of all. But that was beyond the point. After all, if I couldn't have him, no one would. In the meantime, I would patiently wait for my shackles to break, wait for the last second of this universe to tick, for the beginning of the end to start. Be that as it may, that didn't mean I couldn't send a message to our little aberration. Oh little one. My little one. Prepare for me. Come to me. Your life will soon be done. Forget the future. Forget the past. Life is beyond you now. Breathe your last. And welcome the end. Eat a Dick Shakespeare wannabe, Alex replied, using the same channel I had created for my message. I smiled. Tearing him apart would be delightful, it only pained me that after killing him, the rest would feel mundane. You will die, mortal, no matter how much you train, or how many allies you gather before I break free, you will fall by my blade, sealing the fate of this universe. Mortal true, I suppose, I mean, I wasn't born into the god business, I fucking earned it. He replied, seemingly chuckling at my previous comment. His foolish hubris really had no bounds. Remarkable. I'm sorry, but in reality, your threats and opinions mean very little to me. So, have fun waiting for your time to come, and do enjoy it after it comes, because it will be very, very brief. On the positive side though, you will get that nothingness you so despairingly want, so, win-win for all of us involved. Anyway, I will be closing this chat, and won't be talking to you until your execution. Bye Tilda. With that said, I felt how my connection to the outside world was cut completely. Immediately realizing what he had done, he had tracked my energy, finding the focal point of it all, before disrupting the flow around my prison. Effectively cutting the limited freedom I had before. I laughed, feeling excitement like never before. Taking his life would be a most enjoyable endeavor. Alex Walker POV. As I continued training with Serenity, doing dungeon after dungeon without resting, I got a call from Null, which was the best way to describe the entire thing. Needless to say, I answered his call, for various reasons. 1. I wanted to gain more intel on him, which I would be able to, if I maintained a connection between us. And, 2. I wanted to cut his connection to the outside world to avoid him making any type of deals with others, which I would be able to do if I located the focal point of the leak on his seal, which I would be able to do through our connection. After doing just that, I decided to take a 2-minute break from my constant training, to revise what I had discovered about him. 1. He was one for dramatics. I mean, his first message was, "Oh little one. My little one. Prepare for me. Come to me. Your life will soon be done. Forget the future. Forget the past. Life is beyond you now. breathe your last. And welcome the end. Like, wow. 2. His seal would last at least another month, from what I could tell when I was cutting his connection to the outside world. 3. I now had a general idea of how strong he was, not level-wise, sadly for that matter, as I hadn't been able to collect enough information for that, but, nevertheless, I had still managed to feel him out through our little talk, getting a very accurate depiction of what I was dealing with. He was stronger than me, by a lot. But not on an unreachable level. If I had to appraise how strong he was compared to me, I would say he was around 2 to 3 times more powerful than my current self. This didn't imply his level was 2 to 3 times higher than mine. If I had to guess his level, I would say he was in the low 3000s, maybe even lower. However, he had absorbed a lot of beings through his blade, several celestials for that matter, increasing his overall powers by a lot, another discovery I had come across during our little chat. His absorption of power was quite different from mine, at least, according to my system. His weapon would claim half of the power absorbed as expendable energy for combat, while he would claim the other half of the power as stats, by an exchange rate that basically only allowed him to truly get around 5% to 7% of his victim's power in raw stats. He had killed a lot of powerful beings, increasing his stats, so to speak, well beyond the range of his level. Kind of like me, but on an all-you-can-eat scale for his specific case. But that's beyond the point now. I now had a clear view of the top of the mountain that lay in front of me. I was glad he had called. Without his need for intimidating me, I would have never had a clear goal in mind, in terms of training. Well, back to grinding, I smiled, running towards Abaddon's room again for the 30th time today. I was, after all, farming his sword skill. Apparently for him to drop the scroll with his skill, I had to allow him to cut me once, unlocking an achievement that enabled the boss to drop the scroll. To be honest, I feel like my power is going all masochist on me with these achievements, but fuck it, I don't mind losing a limb or two temporarily as long as the reward was juicy enough. Sif POV. Thor had finally come back, after finally having completed his mission in record time. However, despite his evident success in his quest, I couldn't help but feel anguish the moment my eyes met his. His eyes, they had changed, having a different feeling to them. It was like staring at the eyes of a dead man. He looked at me as we talked, but it was like he was seeing right through me, with an empty gaze, barren of all emotions, or rather, lacking Thor's natural gleam. Hela was the first one to notice this, gazing at Thor kindly. "He will recover in time," Hela muttered a few seconds after Thor had left. Her voice soft, and emphatic as each word left her mouth. "You really think so?" I asked, feeling as if my heart was beating 10 times slower. Thor was many things, a fool, a thrill-seeker, a child at heart, a brute, and much more, but above all, he was Asgard's son. Asgard wasn't ready, none of us were, we still needed that beacon he represented. Hela sighed, running one of her hands through her hair, as she turned to face me. "I know that look, and all he needs is time to process, maybe a talk with Alex as well. I had that same look after my first campaign with Odin, hopefully, he will get the time to process." "I thought you enjoyed war and conquest," I replied, sighing. "That wasn't always the case." Hela chuckled, staring into her childlike hands in reminiscence. "I just wanted to make Odin proud." "So you didn't enjoy fighting at the beginning?" I smiled, finding that statement highly amusing. "Oh no, I always enjoyed a good fight, but war was a different matter altogether." Hela sighed, shrugging ever so slightly. "Be that as it may, my childlike thoughts changed, adapting to the circumstances as I waged my life on the battlefield day after day. I don't quite recall when I started loving war, but it simply happened, so I guess everything worked out in the end. Everything worked out in the end. I looked at her, in shock. Was the former All-Father that terrible of a father? How old were you during your first campaign? I had to know, I wanted to know. 8, Hela replied without missing a beat. It wasn't that bad though. I remember being nervous, but determined to do as Odin asked. I had it easy with that one, to be honest. It was a fairly easy campaign. The enemies we were fighting at the time were extraordinarily weak, so we eradicated them quite fast. I think it took a month or so to kill everyone on that planet. Now, the next campaign we fought 2 weeks later. Now that one was scary. She chuckled. I almost died twice there, passing out in the middle of the battlefield, only to wake up a few seconds later over the body of someone I killed, to see Odin giving me a look that said, "Be tough, be a warrior." So I did. I stood up with a cry, grabbed my blade from the ground and pushed through the pain. With time, things became easier, and soon, at the young age of 13, I was leading the soldiers with him. Odin was a monster. How could he do that? How could anyone do that? She was a child, his child, and he took her love, her trust, her everything and crushed it under his hands. No child deserves that. Don't feel sad for me, darling. It's unbecoming of you. I might even think you like me, and we can't have that now, can we? Hela chuckled. If anything, I am horrified by your tale, I replied with a sigh, musing over her tale. I never thought the former Olaf Odin to be capable of such things. Well, in his defense, and yes, I know how odd that sounds coming from me, the Odin I knew, and the one you know are two entirely different individuals, Hela replied with a small shrug. Perhaps, but that doesn't excuse his actions, I replied, my tone firm. While it was true I didn't like Hela, it didn't change the fact Odin's actions had been beyond despicable. As Emily says, Hela replied with a small chuckle, sure, I still want to see him die on a stake, his body set aflame as he screams in sheer unyielding agony, with me laughing at his agonizing face, but seeing as that will never happen, I am satisfied knowing he has no powers, with Alex and Thor having taken them as a punishment for his treason in keeping me a secret after my supposed death. So, glass half full situation. Glass half full. If you say so, I sighed, my mind going back to Thor. The point of all of this being, Thor will go back to normal in no time, Hela said, reading my face. Maybe when Alex comes back, I smiled. Alex did have a way to make Thor smile, or come to reason. They really seemed like brothers, more so than Thor and Loki ever looked. That's my bet, Hela nodded with a smile, before her face morphed into a frown, staring right ahead of her. I followed her gaze, finding Vest and Adra walking into the room. Hi. Vest smiled, waving at us, making Hela tense even more. Could it be that she was able to feel they were threats? That made no sense. If they were, which was Alex's running theory, they had fooled us all. Well, hello there, ladies, Adra winked, giving Hela a warm smile. Why so tense? I haven't pranked you yet. I think. My apologies, I simply do not like strangers, Hela replied without missing a beat. As you can clearly see, I am but a child, at least in body, so, as Emily would say, stranger danger. Fair enough, Adra shrugged. We are so sorry to disturb you girls, we really are, but we were looking for Alex and Emily. We have looked everywhere, and we can't find them. Do you have any idea where they are? Vest inquired, her eyes shining with kindness. We do not, I replied, just as Alex had told me to, because I really didn't know. I had no idea where the girls were, or him for that matter. It was all part of the plan, to secure the girls as much as possible, by keeping those who knew their location to the bare minimum. "Ah, I see," Vest sighed, before pulling a basket full of muffins out of nowhere with a warm infectious smile. "Well, if you see them, please tell them we are looking for them." "Will do," I replied, taking the basket. Realizing that now that I was aware of her presence making me feel warm and relaxed, it felt wrong, almost as if I was being drugged, or hypnotized by her. "Well, toodaloos," Tildra smiled, before turning around, and walking towards the exit with Vest. After Vest and Adra left, leaving us in silence, we moved back to my private training ground to continue with my training with Hella instructing me, as well as having some privacy to ask Hella why she reacted that way. Much to my shock, the moment we entered my place, Hella turned to me and hissed, "We need to contact Alex, right fucking now. You know who they really are?" I urged, seeing her agitated state, and immediately realizing what was happening. "Not all, but I caught wind of Alex's suspicions thanks to his change towards them," Hella replied, frowning. "My first opinion of them was that they were unbearably irritating, the man especially, while the girl felt like home to me, so instead of questioning that, I simply accredited those feelings to Emily rubbing off on me. But after seeing Alex's body language change towards them, I started to question my own assumptions, and when I did, I found myself no longer feeling safe around them." "Same," I replied quietly. The moment I was told they were possible threats, I just couldn't help but feel like jumping out of the room whenever they were around. The feelings around them were the same, but now, they felt as if snakes were crawling all over my body. I have no doubts those two are threats. Everything twisted the moment I became aware there was something to be wary about, almost as if I had opened my eyes to actually see them, Hella added, taking a deep breath, her thoughts concurring with mine. The once warm and welcoming feeling of home the girl gave, changed. It was still warm, but somehow cold at the same time, making me feel like I was a prisoner of my own home. And the man, he wasn't simply irritating anymore, he was now terrifying, and cold, his eyes like those of a snake playing a game. "We must act carefully," I nodded. "I am fully aware," Hella replied, "so do that." "Well, that's not nice." "That voice, Adra." "Leave my property this instant," I ordered, keeping my tone even and calm, as Adra stared into my eyes. Hella was right, his eyes felt like those of a snake, it was unsettling. Adra hummed, index finger pressed upon his lips. "Not sure I like that offer." "I refuse to die without a fight," Hella muttered, pulling a knife out of her clothes while getting into a battle stance. "Well, ain't that cute?" Adra chuckled, looking at Hella. "Leave. Now." I repeated, knowing fully well it would not work, especially if this man was truly an enemy, which I was now certain he was. "Or I'll be forced to fight," I added, unsheathing my blade. How about this for a counter-offer?" Adra winked, snapping his fingers. At first, everything seemed the same, however, it didn't take me long to figure out what he had done. Hella was no longer around. "You killed her," I muttered, before staring into his eyes. "No, I simply sent her away, to a forest nearby," Adra replied, as he started walking towards me with an unsettling smile. "She will be okay, probably, but I did what I had to do, there was simply no other way. I needed to have a private chat with you, nothing bad, I assure you." Author note: this revelation doesn't discredit the theory of who are Alex's parents. This revelation, if anything, shows that a predator knows how to hunt his prey. As I foreshadowed earlier a few chapters ago. Lies that are truths. Clue of the day equals the real deal already appeared in the novel multiple times. At the beginning, middle and somewhere before this arc. Let's see who manages to note the appearances in the novel. Beyond that. Enjoy, with love, Corn. 18 days had passed since I started doing dungeons. 18 days since I had last seen the real world. 18 days where I hadn't slept at all, doing dungeon after dungeon, non-stop. 18 days where I hadn't eaten. In short, 18 days where I had done nothing but killing monsters. Serenity, weapon skill, passive, LV 571 equals. Allows the user to freely handle Serenity better. 6,281% increase in energy consumption efficiency. Affinity LV1 equals plus 50% increase to all weapon buffs. During this time, I had focused not only on leveling up, but on increasing my weapon skill as fast as possible. Experimenting with Serenity, and some of my other skills as much as I could. I was confident that at this rate, I would be able to face Null without any difficulties. I was overwhelmingly happy with my progress, however, it was time for a break. Time to see how everyone was doing, before coming back to my grind. I yawned, exiting the dungeon I had just cleared, teleporting Asgard as I took the first step out. Oh, Thor is BA. I stopped mid-sentence, realizing as I opened my map that there was something wrong. Sif and Adra were alone in her house. Without a second thought I teleported to her house, a few feet behind Adra, to find at a first glance, Sif lying on the ground coughing in pain, her body spasming, as Adra tried to help her. "Drink this, you will feel better," Adra said, his tone soothing and full of worry. I said nothing at the sight, instead deciding to act, by taking a step forward, snatching Sif out of his grasp before he could react, as I scanned her body. Curse of Set, unique affliction. Those afflicted by this curse have their minds warped and twisted, leaving nothing but static noise behind, and broken memories for as long as the curse remains. The curse is transmitted via bloodstream, meaning that Set requires to mix his own blood with that of his target for the curse to activate. Once active, the curse becomes nearly impossible to lift, as any curse purifying methods would also affect the victim's blood that has now become one with Set's. Unique status equals as a unique affliction. This curse can only be lifted if Set himself breaks the curse, or by giving the afflicted to drink from a vial of purified blood from Set himself. Negation can also cure the affliction, by negating Set's blood in the victim's body, or the mixture of both bloods from existing. However, the user requires to know the properties of both bloods to discern between negations. I needed more information to lift the curse with negation. It would be easier to have him lift it, or kill him and purify his blood. Alex. You're back. I'm glad you came. I don't know what to do. I was looking for you, and decided to ask your girlfriend about your whereabouts, but when I came to talk to her, I found her like this. Adra sighed, his tone full of worry. Even with my powers, whatever afflicts her is beyond my reach to help. Undo the curse, now. I ordered, my voice muffled by absolute rage. Undo it's a curse. Adra said, in shock, then this complicates things. I turned around, glaring at him as I gently placed Sif on her couch, summoning Serenity to soothe her mind, taking her mental pain away with the powers that once belonged to the Mind Stone. Set, the Serpent God, LV 2489. You can't fool me any longer, I replied, my eyes on Sif, as I summoned a pair of healing golems to attend to her. What? Set, still pretending to be Adra, tilted his head to the side, confusion dawning on his face. I am offering you the undeserving luxury of a quick death, Serpent God, so do as I command, and undo the curse, now. I spat, taking a step towards him. The moment I said that, something in his eyes snapped, like a balloon bursting, his entire demeanor changing. As he bowed slightly, "You saw through my disguise. Remarkable, but rather unexpected. Was it Gaia that sold me out?" He sighed. "I guess it doesn't matter anyways if my sister sold me out or not. Too bad though. I was sure the images I had extracted from your surface thoughts would do. I mean, they belonged to people you subconsciously love. Hell, I even overwrote my mind and that of a clone I had created to play the perfect role, planning to keep being Adra and Vest, at least until you were ripe enough for, well, you will see soon enough." "Very well then, if you won't heal her, I have no use for your existence," I replied in a deep, menacing tone. "Aren't you a confident one?" Set chuckled, his eyes on me. "Child, don't let your hubris blind you. While it's true your potential is unmatched in every conceivable way, you are still nothing but an infant compared to me, one far, far away from my league. However, seeing as you are about to throw your life away for that worthless female, I will offer you a once-in-a-lifetime deal. Surrender to me, and I will lift the curse." "Enough talk, you putrid parasite," I scowled, teleporting the both of us to an empty planet to avoid hurting anyone, leaving behind Serenity to aid the golems in keeping Sif without any pain. Once again, my generosity is wasted. Oh well, that's what happens when I want to eat without bruising the meat. It never works. Set sighed, shaking his head in disappointment. "I don't think you've fully understood what's happening, or why I'm so confident. So before I begin dismantling you and turning your remains into a fucking bag, have something very clear. I am stronger than you," I replied, walking towards him. "That's sweet," Set snorted, wearing a honeyed look. "I almost feel bad for what I'm about to do." The Watcher POV. Time. Space. Reality. It's more than a linear path, it's a prism of endless possibilities, where a single choice can branch out into infinite realities, creating alternate worlds from the ones you know. I am the Watcher, the guardian of these realities. The one to know it all. What will be? What could be? I had, after all, seen it all happen more than once. However, I was proved wrong, when the anomaly came to be. Alex Walker, an unknown, his existence a singularity in all of the multiverse. A deviation from all, without precedent. I had observed Alex through it all. His awakening. The challenges he had to face, all of it, I had witnessed it. For me, every event involving him, every turn, every blink, every action, every challenge he faced, it was all new. I had seen him go from a mortal man to a god, with each step he took paving his unconceivable future with endless possibilities, just like the multiverse. Today, he was about to face Set, an elder god of untold power, that just a few days ago was out of his reach completely. However, Alex seemed confident of his victory, after having trained within his dungeons for 18 days. I had no way to confirm his claims, for his dungeons, as he called them, stepped out of his reality, leaving without sight of his. So, I truly had no idea what he did in them, but if past events had proved anything, it was that Alex was hardly a liar. A truth the elder god would soon find out. Alex Walker POV. I walked towards Set, my energy flaring in anger at the sight of him. "I might torture that female a bit after I'm done with you," Set taunted with a sickening smile, his body morphing with an explosion into what I assumed was his true form. A six-headed serpent of massive proportions, one that would easily tower above the tallest mountain, each of his heads gracing the sky menacingly from a different angle. In a fit of rage, I dashed towards him in a blur of movement, closing the distance between us before he could continue talking, grabbing one of his heads with my left hand before smashing it into the ground. This putrid beast had crossed a line, and he would pay for it. There was no holding back, there was no calm approach, only making him suffer as much as I could. Well, impatient are we. I wanted to play a bit before having supper, but sure, let's play your way. He said through one of his many heads, with the head I had smashed into the ground, bleeding, as he offered a sadistic laugh that echoed across the empty planet. Ah, well, in that case, let's eat. At this, Set's energy exploded with power, his cosmic presence becoming larger, as his power increased. He was tapping into his realm to access more power. I was, however, overwhelmingly unimpressed by his pathetic display, simply deciding to match his display of power, by flaring my own cosmic energy to match his. My, impressive, no wonder you are so confident. Set cackled, his serpentine tongues oscillating outside his head in quivering excitement. Be that as it may, it won't be enough, but, if it's any consolation, it does make you look more appetizing. I said nothing, gesturing at him to come at me with one hand confidently. Set chuckled at this, charging at me. Our auras flaring, like small stars in a bright display of power that illuminated the planet, as we crashed into one another, our attacks pushing against one another. Set, the Serpent God, POV. I charged towards Alex, sure the amount of power I was channeling from my realm would be more than enough to deal with him quickly. I was, after all, using a level of power far greater than I have ever used before. However, the moment our attacks clashed, I felt myself being pushed back. That should have been impossible. A few days ago, I was vastly stronger than him, yet, now, as we fought, he was not only matching my attacks, but he was pushing them back with a stoic expression on his face, easily keeping up with me. His potential was unmatched, but this was inconceivable. Now, more than ever, I wanted to devour him. Laughing, I began to channel more power from my realm, trying to overwhelm him, to test his current limits before devouring him. However, rather than pushing him in any measure, I found myself being pushed back even harder as he remained unfazed through all of it. I gritted my teeth in anger, before opening my mouths, blasting at him with multiple torrents of energy. Each blast coming from a different angle, making my attack one impossible to dodge, at least completely. However, as my attacks were about to reach him, he took a step forward, maneuvering his body around, dodging each blast with ease, as if dodging toys being thrown at him, before teleporting in front of me, snapping two of my necks with a simple chop. You bastard, I snarled in pain, slithering a few meters back from him as my necks healed. I had to give it to him, he had improved a lot, more so than I ever imagined. Nevertheless, I was far from done, I still had a lot of power to tap into. He would soon learn just how powerful I was. Is that all? He asked. Don't be cocky now, I have barely begun to tap into my true power. I spat in anger, slamming my tail to the ground, as I channeled even more power from my realm before rushing at him again. This time creating multiple clones of me, to attack him from every conceivable angle at the same time with a vast array of attacks, in an attempt to overwhelm the arrogant fool to show him the error of his way. However, much to my shock, Alex managed to block each one of my attacks with a disconcerting amount of ease, without even looking at them, keeping his eyes fixed on me, the original body. This shouldn't be possible. I cursed inwardly. While it was true I had yet to reach my limit, this was inconceivable. No one, no matter his potential, should be able to reach such a level, in such an amount of time. It took millions of years to reach the level he was displaying. I told you, didn't I? Alex said, walking towards me as he blocked all of my attacks, including those coming from my clones. I am stronger than you. Angered by his hubris, I tried to push my advance harder, but before I could, Alex blurred out of sight, appearing in front of me, landing a clean hit to my body, right where my liver was located, sending my body flying across the planet, with a trail of blood that followed close behind. No matter what you do, you will not defeat me. To me, you are nothing but a pathetic worm, Alex said, before erasing my clones with a simple wave of his arm. What a boast! Careful not to choke on your modesty, brat. Then, again, I can't really fault you for being this confident. I mean, credit where it is due, you have really exceeded my expectations. By a big margin, I'll admit, I laughed, my body healing as I stood up from the ground, glaring at him. But, as I said before, I am far from done. Far from done. Good, I haven't even started using my power, Alex replied, hardening his gaze at me with a confident air. His hubris really knew no bounds. He really thought he was stronger than me. He would see. No more playing around. Is that so? I exclaimed, sneering. Then allow me to correct your faulty disillusions. By showing you my real power. Be a nice change of pace, Alex replied, with a cocky smile. We'll see. I growled, my body suddenly exploding with power as I tapped into all there was to get from my realm, reaching my maximum power. Normally, I didn't enjoy using this amount of power, as I could only use it for a few minutes outside my realm, but a few minutes it's all I needed. So, still confident. He would be the first being in eons to taste my full power. I could hardly wait to see his cocky demeanor turn into one of despair before devouring him. That's it for the video, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe. Also tell me in the comment section which kind of fanfiction you would like to watch next, or if you have a recommendation.